This is the Atomic Shinobi, and today I am going to narrate what if Naruto was cast aside by his own blood. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
A family. What is it? What makes a family different from a group of friends, for example? Maybe from a coalition of strangers. When he was younger, he used to ask himself that question each night, 6 or 7 years old, at most. He was supposed to be a member of this picture perfect family, so it was really ironic. Everyone looked up to Konoha's diamond sketched household, and some even worshipped them mindlessly. However, they failed to notice the malfunctioning gears, which befell an apparently complex clock. After all, neither his mother nor his father were ever really there for him. Mommy. Father. Despite the agonizingly great desire to fill the words with love and affection, they sounded hollow in his mind. He frequently witnessed other parents showing their kids the same amount of love and care. His younger sister received more love and affection from his parents than he did. He realized that the Hokage, a legendary figure in the Konoha village, was his father. He and his sister, Narumi, used to be proud of this fact. She continued to do so. He didn't. The harsh reality was that he had unintentionally sacrificed something significant in the name of Konoha and its people, despite his valiant deeds and selfless sacrifices. His early years. Narumi had been given preferential treatment since they were young and were informed that the Kyuubi had been sealed into them before they were even born. In order to refine Narumi's abilities, their parents trained her while abandoning him to study simple scrolls on his own, frequently ignoring him. They would give him the same justification each time they were done. They were exhausted and could start over the following day. However, they simply repeated the procedure rather than picking up. To be honest, it made him sick. I'm feeling suicidal because, not many 10-year-olds have such depressing thoughts. The Kyuubi, the only person or thing he trusted in his emotional outlet. Ironically, the demon that his parents had fought so hard to defeat, the one thing that the entire village feared and detested, was trapped inside him. In any case, his mental consciousness. The demon's actual chakra was in Narumi's possession. I apologize, Kurama-san. I didn't realize you could hear me clearly. Gaki, why don't you flee if you're so exhausted by this? Then, what should I do next? Stroll about, like a lost pauper? For that to be successful, I need a plan. It would take weeks or months to plan and get ready for. No, I want to, but not without a plan. You have more insight and foresight than most people twice your age for a baby monkey. I'm a little let down. Since I'm superior to them. No, it's pathetic, really, because a child is more emotionally mature than an adult. Oh, all right. Thank you, monkey. Boy. Putting aside all the compliments, what should I do? What should I do? Run away? To be honest, Kurama-san, the idea of starting a new, independent life is, well, pretty lovely. Oh, well, keep quiet for the time being, puppy. In fact, you have a graduation ceremony to attend, don't you? Naruto got out of bed, sat up, got up, leapt to the closet, and opened it in a single, seamless motion while mentally slapping himself. Pulling out a crisp white t-shirt, he put on a white hoodie with navy stripes down the sleeves, changed out of his pants into dark navy blue cargo shorts, and then put on his socks and shinobi boots. I'm going to be late, he cried. Oh no, I will be running late. He grabbed his shuriken and kunai pouches and jumped out of his window, shouting again. Kurama let out an inward sigh. I'm getting a little too sentimental, but the boy has a gift and has the potential to surpass even his father, that damned Yondaime. He's entirely mine to mold and shape to my preferences. I adore how easily these people can be influenced when they're young, but I still need to figure out how to reconnect with myself. I'm sure Naruto will assist me in the long run. Where is Naruto? Kushina? I believe that he was with you. As he sat in the front row of the academy graduation ceremony with his arms crossed, Minato asked. Kushina looked back at him after raising an eyebrow before starting to thin to herself. I told you to wake him up so he wouldn't be late, but he took a nap. You told him, right, Minato? Her tone became calm but deadly as she answered. The blonde Hokage nodded, hoping that he had. He couldn't recall for sure, but he would have to find a way to make up for it to his wife and son if Naruto didn't appear. Kushina-chan, Minato-san, a young boy, with raven hair blowing in the wind, cried out, and he walked over to the two. Kushina gave the boy a hug while Minato grinned and gave him a high five. Sasuke. You've matured. What's up with my favorite nephew? She smiled while the Uchiha scratched his head and smiled sheepishly. Yeah, I've improved, but I finished in second place overall, right behind Narumi. She's amazing. Why aren't you two able to train me in that manner? He asked joyfully and loudly. Minato gave Sasuke a thumbs up after laughing and patting his head. The Uchiha grinned more broadly when he said, well, if I ever find a good shinobi to succeed me as Hokage, I might take up to teaching ninja again. A voice behind them began, Minato, don't give him too much hope. I don't want him to believe he's the next Hokage without putting in the necessary effort. With a blank expression on his face, Minato turned to face the person who had made the statement. The Uchiha leader shrugged as he joked, oh, come on, relax a little, Fugaku. I don't want to lose one of my advisors from a stroke. He said, so I hear that your kids graduated and with flying colors, too, to which Kushina and Minato both raised an eyebrow. Colors in flight. But how did you know that Naruto never showed us his report card? As Makoto arrived, Kushina asked. The grades of Naruto. He showed us just the other day when he came to visit Itachi. You would think they were twins. He always follows Itachi when he can. In reality, Itachi was training him the other day. She added a few details, shocking the Namikaze family. Itachi said Naruto wanted to learn to improve his taijutsu. After we discovered that Genin was working with Orochimaru, Kabuto, I believe, I've been occupied with paperwork. I was unaware that Itachi was instructing him in his spare time. I'll have to find out what Naruto knows, but I'm pretty impressed. And he did well in his classes. What kept him from telling us? As Makoto turned away and escorted Sasuke to the graduation stage, Minato posed the question. Fugaku scratched his head and shrugged. Fugaku, hoping the lie would stick, said, I wouldn't know. He reminds me of Itachi, more relaxed and easy going. But he comes from an Itachi mold nonetheless. Minato making a scene over the truth was the last thing he needed. Rewind. So, Naruto, how are the ramen noodles? As she sat down to serve Itachi and Fugaku, who was attentively reading a newspaper, Makoto inquired. As the Uchiha matriarch blushed, Naruto cheerfully nodded and gave her the thumbs up. Kushina was always the better cook, in her opinion. Makoto.san, it's fantastic. You're a fantastic cook, he chuckled, making Itachi and Makoto smile. Fugaku tried not to show it, but a tiny twitch at the corner of his mouth was there. That child had a remarkable talent for extracting even the smallest sliver of joy from those who were depressed. Hi, thank you, Naruto.kun. Since the meat stall was closed and we ran out of chicken, may I use beef instead? Naruto bowed his head and nodded once more. It's all right, besides, I can't really complain because you gave me a free dinner, he grinned. Fugaku gave a nod from behind his document. He adored this child's personality, damn it. How was your practice today, Naruto? I've heard that you've finally mastered the chakra. Concentration. How far along are you? Itachi asked, causing Makoto and Fugaku to give Naruto a startled look. Consciousness of chakras? Naruto.kun. You're already learning that? That should be until you join a Genin team, right? At least a few years will pass before then. Makoto shouted, and Fugaku nodded in agreement. Naruto, it's true. How long have you been doing it? Most academy students are still unable to handle that. Itachi's parents gave him a suspicious look when he replied, he's only been taught it yesterday. The Uchiha prodigy simply shrugged. Makoto shook her head as he said, call him my protege. Naruto.kun. Why don't you ask your father to train you? There must be time for him. Before Naruto cast a sorrowful glance down, she asked. He spends most of his time training Narumi. Most of what I know is either self-taught or something that Itachi taught me. Fugaku looked intently at the other two Uchiha, almost pleading. We need to discuss this with Minato. Both of them gave a nod. Have you attempted to speak with them? Makoto inquired, aware that his family had begun to prioritize Narumi more because of her condition. She had personal experience of what could happen to a child if they didn't receive enough care, so it wouldn't end well. It had taken him years to recover his emotional faculties, and Itachi was evidence of that. She grinned and said, it's okay, Naruto.kun. Since it's getting late, why don't you stay here for the night? You can share bunk beds with Itachi. Naruto nodded and yawned while massaging his eyes. Itachi got up to tuck the little 10-year-old in, carrying him upstairs. Fugaku and Makoto sighed as they watched the two vanish. You know, he's drifting away from his family it seems. They must resolve this as a family, but we can't tell them. We'll give the boy a recluse. Flashback. Come to an end. Kushina glanced at Narumi, who was speaking cheerfully to Sakura and Ino on the other side of the stage, and asked, so, do you know who is leading each team? Yes, there is, Minato said, grinning at Kakashi, who waved back from the other side of the field. But I only know that Kakashi, Asuma, and Kurenai are each leading teams 7, 10, and I believe 8. I don't know who's leading team 2, though. I heard that the Jonin personally requested just one student. I granted permission, on the grounds it's not Narumi. With a relieved smile, Kushina nodded. To Makoto's mild annoyance, she sighed. Good, Kakashi will probably have chosen Naruto and Narumi, along with Sasuke. Considering the future of your children, please, Kushina, don't make the same mistakes that Fugaku and I did. Narumi yelled, Naruto. Baka. You're late, as the blonde boy touched down a short distance away. After glancing at him, Minato shook his head. He thought he saw a chilly expression in his son's eyes. Yo, Sasuke. Lit up Naruto's face, completely disregarding Narumi's cry. But all the Uchiha could do was grunt. HN. Without even looking at him or Narumi, Naruto simply shrugged and continued on past them. Neither the Namikaze nor the Uchiha families were aware of this fact. Kushina frowned at her children's behavior and sighed. What is wrong with them? They need to show manners. But to make sure Makoto saw him, Fugaku pushed his head. Naruto was leaving his family sooner than they had anticipated. Kiba scratched his head, trying to figure out who would be on which team. So who do you think got put in what team? He asked. Sakura laughed and Ino nodded in agreement. Hehe, I don't know, and as long as I'm with Sasuke-kun, it's all good, she said. But Sasuke and Narumi were too preoccupied with Naruto to pay attention to what the pinkhead had to say. They were doing everything they could to watch him, to see how he consistently separated himself from the rest of the group. Sasuke looked at Narumi and asked, Do you think something is wrong with him? She shook her head. As she continued to watch her older brother, she tossed her red hair aside and said, No, this is normal for him. Although he seems more impassive today, but it could be graduation. You're not a typical boy, Naruto. Why can't you just act like a typical brother? I want a real family, but it seems like I'm a step away from having one. That last step is like a mile away. Perhaps I could have avoided this if I hadn't boasted about how my parents used to always look out for me. Am I to blame for your current state? Most likely, I am. All right, I'll fix it then. I will see to it that your parents see you. I want you to be proud of me when I become Hokage. You seem troubled, Narumi. What is it? With a sigh, the young Namikaze daughter gave the Uchiha a thumbs up and smiled. She grinned and said, Nothing. Sasuke, it's all right, to which he nodded. Iruka yelled, Class, get ready. Team announcements are about to be declared, and the kids immediately formed a straight line. There was a sudden silence in the crowd around him. Some parents couldn't wait to find out with whom their kids would be training. All right, Team 10. Training under Sarutobi Asuma is Nara Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji, and Yamanaka Ino. Ino frowned, disappointed at her misfortune of missing a team with Sasuke, while Naruto yawned and closed his eyes. Well, good. Bye. Okay, Team 8, under leadership of Yuichi Kurenai, are Hyuga Hinata, Aburame Shino, and Inazuka Kiba. Kiba exclaimed, Woo! I'm on a team, before taking a rock to the head. Then his mother, Sume, yelled, Shut it, Kiba. You're representing our clan. Don't look like a kid that barely passed. Naruto suppressed a chuckle. Hell, he had to admit, it was funny. And for Team 7, under guidance of Hitaki Kakashi, Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke, and Namikaze Narumi. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as he glanced at Narumi, who was engrossed in embracing Sakura and Sasuke while waving at their family. That was it. He was forgotten. There was no team for him. Not at all. Not a sensei. No teammates. TCH, he said with a frown, tears welling up in his eyes, and he turned to leave the stage. When his mother called his name, he didn't even bother to listen. All he wanted was to forget. A woman looked at the young blonde boy who was leaving and said, Damn, so he got overlooked. That's pretty harsh. He shot off in a blur, leaping onto a tree branch. He was quick. Yes, perhaps. But we need that child, if we're going to go through with this plan. After all, you want your revenge, correct? Fine, I'll keep an eye on him and anybody near him. You know, brat, you wouldn't have really realized your full potential with those teams. Knowing the fix was telling the truth, Naruto nodded. Nevertheless, I at least anticipated having a team after all the work I did, so much for that. Why not work out by yourself, create your own reputation and name? But that's not how it operates. However, it was never stated that it had to be here. I'm still the Hokage's son, so it's not that easy. If I disappear, they'll send the Anbu after me, and I doubt I can outrun them when they're genuinely trying. What about assistance from within? What are you saying? Someone in a respectable position will undoubtedly want to leave. If they assist you, we may be able to get away. To be honest, nobody in a position of authority here would want to leave, but someone with a criminal history might. What are you saying? What plans do you have? My father saw a young man working for Orochimaru. I believe he was Kabuto, posting as a genin a few days ago. One small detail. My brilliant but foolish career has been caught. That error needs to be fixed by us, don't you think? Would you like to release a high security prisoner who has been employed by one of the most wanted in the land of four? That would be betraying your father, wouldn't it? The US is at a high risk of dying as a result. I refuse to do it. It would break my father's conscience and possibly his happiness, you're right. What? In fact, he may even curse the Kyuubi for ruining his idyllic life. He may even have to go into hiding to avoid the embarrassment and… Come on, let's do this. Naruto stood up and turned back to face the village, smiling inwardly at his own inventive use of reverse psychology and emotional manipulation. Alright. Prisoner hours are between 5 and 6. That gives me a 1-hour window. But I have to cancel my father's Hireishin no Jutsu, so he can't immediately appear at the scene. But to do that, I'd have to find either Mom or Jiraiya. Unless I get Kabuto out of the cell. With the guard's approval, I pose as my father, order a lone interrogation with Kabuto, use that time to formulate a plan, distract the guard's attention while he escapes. You're pretty sly, Gaki, for a depressed person, I'll admit that. As Kabuto stepped over Katetsu's unconscious body, he sighed, well, this certainly isn't what I planned when I came to instigate a rebellion. But it's close enough, I assume. With a shrug, Naruto started rewinding the security tape and swiftly erased the escape footage. Naruto astonished the silver-haired teenager by saying, alright, Kabuto. You'll keep your side of the bargain, correct? You know, were you anybody other than the Yondaimi's son, I would have killed you by now, but… being who you are, yes, I'll take you to Orochimaru. Though, I am curious why you wish to see him, of all people, he responded. Naruto grinned and then chuckled quietly. That's simple, really. Oh, yes, it is. I want to kill my sister? Kabuto groaned in frustration and then rolled his eyes. To hell with you, then. The last thing I want, or need, is another one of you emotionally crippled brats. After giving a shrug, Naruto turned away and fled through the main window. Alright, so maybe I exaggerated on that, but either way, I simply need her out of my life. A mental smirk came over Kabuto, and his bad mood vanished in an instant. So he could take advantage of the child's emotional instability? Simple? Well, in that case, the way I see it, maybe joining Orochimaru would work to your benefit? How so? Simple, really. He can help train you, make you reach your true potential, actually. Naruto dismissed the idea with a sneer. Of course, but so could any high-profile ninja. Give me a good reason, now. Kabuto let out a sigh. It turned out that the child wasn't that dumb. Why leave your sister in the past, or kill her, when you could humiliate her, defeat her, and force her to live with the shame that if she had treated you better, allowed you to receive love, she could have escaped this fate. Naruto closed his eyes and considered the idea. Would I be able to surpass my family and make their blind eyes see what they have done in exchange for joining the most wanted traitor in Konoha history and permanently ignoring my ties to the village? Even though it's what I've been longing for, it seems like something is preventing me from achieving my goal. Anyone can talk about killing and hurting boys, but doing it is a different matter entirely. What are you saying? Even though your father barely notices you now, I can't deny that you are much safer in his care, despite how much I despise him for locking me away. Do you think I should remain? I'm not advising you on what to do, rather, I'm saying that once you make a choice, there's no going back. Restarting at a good point is not an option in this game. I understand. He opened his eyes and looked at Kabuto, who was waiting for the boy's choice in complete silence. Well, what's your answer? I will be a noob.nin for the rest of my life if I leave, and I will never be able to return. Let's go. My father makes his usual visits here in about 6 minutes, and he placed seals all over the village. With security as it will be, we have 6 minutes to leave the village, but that isn't possible. Well, we'd better move quickly, wouldn't we? Kabuto nodded after letting out a sigh. It was better to get away while he was lucky. Uzumaki, so much for weeks or even months of preparation. I can't go back now, so is this it, Kurama? Shut it. You will have to live with the consequences of your decision, but you are right, you crossed the line of no return. Nevertheless, I am not sure if I should be proud of you or concerned for our safety at this point. I suppose this marks the beginning of a new life. I wonder if Narumi will be content that she no longer has me in her life. After 8 years. Hi. Security Prison Center in Konoha. Even though your brief story explains why Naruto fled and was linked to numerous Orochimaru sightings, you were quite the burden to apprehend for a missing ninja who isn't even close to 20 yet. Tell me, how did you develop the skill level that allowed you to compete with me? A tall man with spiky hair that was outlined by the low light of the interrogation room sighed. It followed down his back in a long ponytail, and even then you could tell it was a pure, snow white. What am I supposed to say? A strong woman trained me, shrugged a figure across the room. The figure was clearly a young adolescent in her late teens, perhaps near 20, based on the initial assessment of her voice. Well, you're a very intelligent comedian, aren't you? You were trained by whom? The original figure leaned in to reveal his face and said, "You've told us that it was a woman I once knew. But to be quite honest, that narrows down very little candidates." However, the hidden girl simply shook her head while crossing her arms and leaning back in her chair. She could have been a nervous wreck, but her calm, yet unsettling, demeanor was as solid as a block of chakra, focused steel. Now, Jiraiya, you need to be polite. I'll answer your questions when it's time. How long are you permitted to be here? The teenager yawned earnestly and asked. His eye twitched, but Jiraiya shook it off. I must obtain the information. He replied, as long as I need be, with whatever means I deem necessary, to which the young woman nodded. Okay, just wanted to know. So, ask away. Well, let's begin by discussing how your group was able to apprehend Naruto. Why is Jinchuriki necessary? Where are the Jinchuriki that were captured? Why attack all 5 of the great villages? How did you maintain such a large network of spies? Who are your spies? Are you acquainted with them at all? Who are all of your members? What does Akatsuki aim to achieve? Why are they and Hoshoku at war now? What is Hoshoku? Its founder is who? Hey, geez, please relax. Well, let's start with the simplest. Hoshoku is an organization that was founded upon pain. Sama's death. It was created in an effort to hunt down the Akatsuki, the teenager moaned, scratching her head and then letting out a long sigh. But why? You call him Pain, but wasn't he Akatsuki's leader? That response is not very logical. Well, it would if you let me finish. Where had I gone? Oh, I see, the remaining Akatsuki members, Kisame, Satori, Deidara, Zetsu, Hidan, and Kakuzu, as well as a few more intriguing members were supposed to be found by Hoshoku. You mean the shinobi who was brought back to life? Precisely. How did Akatsuki bring Tobirama Senju back to life? Well, for starters, you have Naruto and Narumi to thank for that. Or at least managing to prevent any other more powerful shinobi from being reborn as a physical slave enemy. Having said that, how is Naruto connected to Hoshoku? Simple, actually, he's our founder. What? Did you really believe that the enemy shinobi had captured an innocent child? But, we didn't think he'd WOU. Would it ever be possible to plan one of the most deadly shinobi groups in history? Jiraiya, you'll have to wait in line. Many people didn't realize how good he was. The sage was sufficiently alerted by that one statement. What are you saying? Naruto was always a step ahead of you in Konoha. Truth be told, he was even, in rare moments, ahead of Pain. How did Naruto end up siding with Pain? At that very question, the young woman chuckled softly and smiled like Cheshire. Now that is the question I've been waiting for. With that, I can answer all your questions. Prepare to continue our little story. Go on. Yes, it's time to move on with Naruto Uzumaki's story, as told by me, Tayuya Uzumaki. Wait, what do you mean by Tayuya Uzum? Stop talking and pay attention, I won't say it again. Where did I leave off? Naruto was escaping with Kabuto. That's where it all changed. You know, to be honest, he was never able to meet the snake. Freak. What do you mean? Wait. He was with him all the time. I have literally dozens of reports where Naruto was helping him out directly. Slow down, I'll explain. Damn you. To Kabuto's dismay, Konan Sensei discovered him at that time even though he hadn't met him yet. What do you mean by his bad luck? Well, let me explain it. Hold on, Kanan. No, I believed she had passed away. Tayuya rolled her eyes in annoyance and scoffed. Considered? Or wished? It's common for you Konoha locals to pretend to be in charge of your own subordinates, even if they are supposedly close to you. Just start the story, returning to the present. WWH. Who are you? The little blonde 11-year-old Uzumaki stammered as he staggered backwards, landing on his rear end in the dirt. She had seemingly materialized out of thin air, in a swirling blur of paper, knocking out Kabuto in a single, swift motion, something Naruto would have found difficult to do with his skills, and the silver-haired assistant to Orochimaru was never even given the opportunity to make a sound. Naruto was now looking straight into her amber-hued, icy, and unforgiving irises. I feel like throwing up. I assume this is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze? Without even blinking, the unidentified woman asked. Why? Yes. Oh Kami, it's coming. Shut up, and stay put. Move from where you stand, and I'll kill you. Before he left the village, Naruto leaned over to his side and heaved everything he had eaten for lunch before the woman could finish. Claiming his bluff over Kabuto had been one thing, but it was quite another when a real shinobi was standing feet away from you and radiating her desire to kill. There was nothing he could conceal. The woman turned away from him with a frown, saying, pathetic. You're obviously not the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. You can't even hold your stead against a simple gaze. What are you aware of about Kurama? As he wiped the bitter and sour liquid from his chin and spat the last of the vomit from his mouth, Naruto asked. The woman didn't even move her chest to breathe, she froze in mid-step. What just did you say? Naruto took several deep breaths, regaining some of his normal composure as he looked up at her from his weak position. Oh my god, that was a wake-up call. Watch it, boy, don't give that woman so much important information. She isn't your typical kunoichi, and she even reacted to my name. Any person who knows that information without my knowledge isn't someone I should take lightly. Right. Kurama. Why? You mentioned the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Why are you looking for them? Okay. Don't tell anyone your sister's name or gender. Right now, that's our only leverage. That's correct, you're the Yondaime's son and first child. Don't you know who the Jinchuriki is? The woman said, taking a step toward him. Naruto gave her a nod before running away from her, still feeling the terror of her initial approach. You see now, child, what a real shinobi can do to you. What? You act like a scared mouse avoiding a skulking cat, despite the fact that she hasn't even touched you. It's pathetic. As he closed his eyes tightly and realized how powerless he was in the situation, Naruto bit his lip and fought back a tear. What's the matter? The woman's eyes had softened significantly as she asked. It was an odd sight, and a little nostalgic. She had been curled up in fear at the sight of a more terrifying human being for years, in the same form as the boy at her feet. For no real reason, she had hated them, the ones who terrorized and frightened the weaker. And she had become one for this one instant. I apologize. Looking back up, Naruto saw her once. Cold face turn into a rather gloomy one. She extended her hand to assist him in getting to his feet. He accepted it. Without ever removing her mask of indifference, she went on. I apologize for the unnecessary act of cruelty, and for the derogatory remark to your situation. Naruto just nodded before he let out a little gasp as the woman lifted him and threw him piggyback over her back. It's been years since my father held me like this. Where are we headed? He asked, glancing back at Kabuto's lifeless body. To take you back to your village? What? No. He gulped as the woman instantly stopped and turned her head slightly to face him. Why not? Isn't that your home village? Yes. I mean no one is there with me. Don't you have a family? Since you're the son of the Hokage, kids are probably lining up to be your friends. No. My sister is more popular than I am, and that would just be political affiliation rather than true friendship. A little taken aback by the boy's choice of words, the woman arched an eyebrow. Not many children would come to that conclusion. Not many children spend countless hours reading and teaching themselves, because their parents are too busy with their daughter. Your family doesn't care about you. Since many people outside of Konoha had imagined and envied the Namikaze family as picture perfect, this had really taken her by surprise. Yeah. That's why I ran away. There's no family. Not for me, anyway. To the young boy's surprise, Naruto sensed the woman change their course and go west instead of east. Where are we heading? To a megacure, and call me Konan, Naruto. Naruto put his head on Konan's shoulders and nodded, unintentionally yawning a little. He was getting very tired, and it was probably already midnight. Half asleep, he murmured, "Good night." Konan just looked at him, then woke up and grabbed his legs behind her back to keep him from falling off. A casual, "good night," was not her style, let alone an emotional greeting. Whether it was one individual complaining about a lack of satisfaction, a chain reaction of complaints, or an escaped criminal who then abducted your only son, politics, like everything else related to government, and the management of others, tended to be drowned in volatile situations. All of it led to headaches and a deep wound to your insecurities as a Hokage and, more significantly, as a father to your child. Kakashi rubbed his temples in frustration and sighed, "This is beyond horrible. If the public finds out that one of Orochimaru's subordinates broke free and took Naruto, they'll cause a riot. If word gets out to the other villages, our security will become the laughing stock." As he walked down the dim hallway with Minato and Kakashi, Itachi said, "They couldn't have gone far, though, Kakashi. Senpai. Judging from the camera footage, or lack thereof, Kabuto most likely broke out no more than an hour ago, took Naruto, then erased the tapes for whatever reason he had." Kakashi stopped as the traveling party descended into the gloomy corridors. Wait a minute. Why would Naruto be down here at all? Furthermore, how did Kabuto manage to avoid the guards' notice? In all honesty, Kabuto couldn't have handled everything by himself. As Yondaimi's primary advisor and the senior chief.in, Command Anbu Captain, Kakashi had grown to take pride in his ability to identify even the smallest details in a situation. But Itachi had his own ideas about what had transpired. Furthermore, neither Kakashi nor Minato could be aware of it. Kakashi. Senpai, are you implying that Naruto may have contributed to Kabuto's escape? Remember that assisting a criminal is a crime that carries a minimum sentence of 5 years in prison. Additionally, even though Naruto did not receive a team, he passed his academy finals, making him an adult according to Shinobi regulations, the Uchiha said, observing Minato's pale face. Well, when it came to parents, they always warned against underestimating the power of denial. I wish his parents could take that lesson to heart. Return to Jiraiya and to Yuya, after 8 years. Even though I now understand how Naruto and Pain got together, this still begs the question. What about Konan? Was she also a part of his conversion? Yuya nodded as she crossed herself and leaned back in the chair. All right, so let's say you don't have the best record with students. Yuya grinned and observed the older man's face twist in anger as she said, "Look at how he ended up." Jiraiya's fists clenched, but he quickly relaxed and closed his eyes. Yuya just sneered. Thwack. A strong hand slammed across the kunoichi's right cheek before she could react, knocking her off the chair. Don't push your luck, Yuya. You know that the only reason you're alive is because he ordered it, as part of the terms. Hey, do you really believe that? What can we expect from a village that ordered AIM to be Burr? Damn, Konoha is really stupid then. Yuya, I am well aware of what transpired during the siege of Omegakure. The Toad Sage slammed his hands on the little table and roared. Do you? Is it any better because of that shit? Ultimately, it was you who left him scarred? When Pain died, you were present. And you made him lose it. You and your haughty village are to blame. The redhead jumped out of the chair and screamed. Jiraiya let out a sigh, realizing that further argument was futile. All right, just keep going. What transpired after Konan picked Naruto up? Jiraiya took several deep breaths, suffering as he thought of that terrible night 2 years ago. On the other hand, Yuya was still getting over the disorienting blow to her face. Nothing much. I simply know parts of what Konan and Naruto talked about, but not all of their conversation. But what I do know is enough to see where Naruto took his first step into who he has become today. Kumogakure, when I was the Jinchuriki, I used to be afraid. After that, I became a Hachibi. I would be impossible for you to stop. In actuality, however, you were unable to even touch my ass. If both of my hands were bound behind my back and I was blind. Yes, I am the champion, but I had to experience the dust firsthand. No one would perceive me as a kid, I therefore had to gain their trust. Grew up in a wild environment, and during that time, I noticed that it was just Hachibi and I, so stop making such a big deal and raise your fists. I saw that the weight on your shoulders was too damn light, so I kept it locked up tight and fought until the dead of night. My dreams soared to the sky, and you haters could never stop me from growing taller because life was a battle and giving up wasn't right. Little Rookie of the Year, I arrived a little brat, can't you hear that I'm still here? I promise never to lose this grace or slow down. Call me the Black Shinobi Shark back in the dark. I destroyed my adversaries, tore through their hearts, with a flow so piercing it felt like a dart stab. Enough. Please just stop talking. The Raikage of Kumogakure, covered both ears and roared. The dark-skinned Jinchuriki just smiled, his eyes obscured by his permanent spectacles. Hey, buddy, it's awesome. It's still a slow journey to Konoha. Why the haste to leave? A sighed and rubbed his temple, sensing that one of his main veins was about to burst, and that B would eventually kill him by a stroke, if not a vein burst. I've already explained it. We must demonstrate to the Leaf that Kumo is steadfastly upholding the agreement. This entails an annual shinobi roster trade, which regrettably always ends with the accusation that one side is defrauding the other. The trade is pointless. When everyone accuses you of being in a business haze? Furthermore, isn't it a bad idea to lose shinobi during this war? It's part of the fragile treaty that, honestly, is the only thing holding Konoha and Suna from a unified attack on Kumo, and the weakened Iwa and Kiri. This continued way with the Akatsuki and Hoshoku has taken its toll on the villages. We need to maintain whatever momentum we have. Ah, that makes sense. But I'm still confused, I guess. It's pointless, I know, it was 8 years ago. So, what makes you the way you are? As he buried his face in the woman's neck and wrapped his arms around Konan's shoulders, Naruto posed the question. I've witnessed a lot in my life, and those experiences have molded me into the person I am today. Why do you ask? As she jumped from tree to tree, she answered, hardly even looking at him. I left my village because my family doesn't even acknowledge me. I know you've been through much worse, so how did you manage to get stronger? Konan closed her eyes and started thinking back on all of her old memories, trusting her body's instinct to lead her in the correct direction. As a child, I grew in poverty and war. Aim, the hidden rain village, was built upon an unmarked land that was located right between most of the 5 great nations. Due to those conditions, we were constantly caught in the cross fires of the surrounding villages, causing us to delve in a constant cycle of fear and anger. After Konan finished speaking, Naruto took a slow, deep breath and did his best to quietly calm himself. Is it common for Kyuubi to experience poverty and war? Poverty and war are as common to humanity as breathing is to you, and to me. Suffering is like hatred. Your kind likes to build on it by enhancing your own quality of life and even by engaging in self-described acts of kindness. Aren't acts of kindness meant to help others? How can they cause suffering? Is a man evil if he is demanding a ransom for a bank full of innocent people? The answer is obvious, of course. Would you help him get away with the money, or would you kill his daughter in the process? Would you save the lives of others for the sake of a young girl and the last hope left in a broken man? What if the ransom was for an operation that was necessary to save his daughter's life? That's me, but what if? There are no what ifs in real life, boy. You have to accept that every decision you make will have both positive and negative effects. I get it. How did you end that pattern? His unruly bangs cast a menacing shadow over his eyes as he asked. But Konan kept walking in Aim's direction without bothering to open her eyes. Who says I didn't follow through? But, you're a strong shinobi. How could you still be in that street? Simply because one is trapped within a negative cycle does not mean one cannot grow strong. We grew strong because of our dream to improve, to correct this world. How? How will you repair hundreds and thousands? Konan, it's not possible. Then perhaps Nagato can open your eyes, Naruto. Nagato? Yes, but until we all understand the Tower of Ain, we won't talk about this anymore. Yes, ma'am. Konan gave a nod, and for the first time in years, a tiny smile appeared on the corner of her lips. He is destined for greatness. Naruto, please tell me why you did this. A young woman with crimson-dot red hair that was split into 9 ends and blowing in the wind asked. A few meters in front of her, a blonde teenager with spiked hair stood with his arms folded, his shinobi vest ripped and burned at the waist, exposing an equally worn mesh undershirt. His skin was cut and bruised in several places, but he just stood there, his face twisted in a proud and angry expression. As the savior and guardian of our people, I was always living in the wake of my own clown. Sister. I trained and pushed my body and mind to the limit and beyond, but no matter how hard or what I did, I was still cast in your shadow, Narumi. All through my childhood, that fact, that nightmare, was thrust into my face. When I departed, I came to the realization that no matter what I did, my parents would never recognize me with you. But why, Naruto? Why go with pain? He murdered defenseless civilians. Baka, did you think I was unaware of that? Naruto snapped his younger sister in the middle of his response. What? I designed the invasion's basic plan, so I was fully aware that he intended to attack Konoha. Why? Our people perished. Our mom was who? Do I appear to care? I joined Pain because I knew he would train me if I joined his cause. I knew I would acquire the necessary skill if I helped him in his attack. The disparity in our personal power would then vanish. Why? You? Everything was your doing. Naruto threw his head back in amusement and let out a menacing laugh. Hee. You're correct, little sister, even though I detested all of you righteous Konoha shinobi, I hesitated at the last second before ordering the invasion. I hesitated because I awoke one morning, not long ago, to realize that I had become attached to you and your friends. Naruto. I, the last of our true bloodline, the last of a dying breed, had begun to settle down with the same people who had neglected me as a child. I even began to fall for a girl who never cared for me. Ino love. Stop talking, really, do you think I'll fall for that again? There was a miscommunication, Shika and she were never the same. I told you to stop talking, all of you deceived me, played with my own feelings. The irony was that, until Konan and Pain revealed the truth, I was just a few seconds away from coming to terms with Konoha as a pleasant place to call home. However, you never let anyone assist you. Why? Why Pain and Konan? Are you not getting it? They came to give me what you all refused to give me. A place of my own where I could be recognized for my own achievements. How are you able to say that? They attempted to murder you. In the village competition. No, Narumi, that's where I understood the full extent of Ain's potential for me. You mean? That's where? Yes. That's where I joined Pain. I watched Hanabi Hyuga's progress, at the tutelage of Konan. And I knew right away, that I had to go back to them. Then why? Why remain with us? Why take the lead? Because, how else would I inform Konan about your defenses, sister? You were her informant, right? You were the one I saw. Yes, that was me, that you openly caught, and still, you couldn't come to the obvious conclusion. Then Both teenagers turned around in disbelief as a strong voice thundered, I see you took the pleasure in blabbering away the plan, Uzumaki. How expected. You. A considerably older Narumi said, Ma. Maybe. That big bomb rosin. Shuriken. Combo was pushing it. A bit. As she clutched her right arm, which was severely burned, the internal harm from her jutsu now clearly visible on the outside. Naruto moaned, Pa. Pathetic, as he hobbled along with his sister, his whole body swollen and bleeding. Without even looking back at her, Narumi essentially dragged himself forward, staring in wonder. Go. Now. I have one final technique left, Narumi. No. Let me assist you. I can. No, you can't. Go. Now. Narumi was about to protest again when she felt a hand quickly strike the back of her neck before being engulfed in darkness. A shinobi with silver hair said, Naruto. You know you won't survive. While staring at the blonde with one open eye. I know, Kakashi. Now carry her away from here. You weren't ever planning on to. Get away from here. Now, Kakashi. She was lucky to have a man like you, Kakashi. What? Tell her that she's beautiful, and I'll save her a seat in the afterlife. Alright. The blood and perspiration that covered Naruto's brow caused his bangs to hang over his eyes as he huffed. Let's finish this, Madara. I must admit that you were the biggest challenger in a while, Uzumaki. But you lost, child. As soon as the full moon arises, I will active. As he started going over his hand signals, Naruto grinned and said, I have one last jutsu left, you pompous relic. And it will end you. Once and for all. Every muscle in his arm screamed in agony at the next movement. No. Tensai. Ba. Bakuden. The blonde roared, pointing his hands at the motionless Uchiha legend. How did yo? Oh no. A strong beam of pure energy blasted outwards towards the Uchiha, dragging Naruto a few feet backwards while he snarled. We will both die from chakra exhaustion if you complete this attack. I know. To the end of time? To die and go beyond. Naruto. Kushina screamed as she leapt to her feet, gripping the bed linens around her, feeling herself start to perspire coldly from the thrashing she inflicted during her nightmares. Kushina. Get up. As he pinned her down and did his best to keep her from getting hurt, Minato yelled. Naruto. Don't. When Minato noticed that she had become somewhat hysterical, he gave her a discreet slap, which immediately calmed the redhead. Am I? Minato? He sighed, hunching over her. I'm sorry, Kushina. It was just. I don't really know what to do, he said. Minato had never in his life given up or backed down when it really mattered, but he couldn't deny that, for the first time in his life, he was completely lost and didn't know what to do about anything. Even the smallest paperwork, which had previously been routine for him, now seemed to indicate that he was a genin trying to oppose the Shodan. As she put her arms around the blonde Hokage, Kushina whispered, It's okay, Minato-kun. We're all just worried. It's my fault, though. I should have been there, I shouldn't have put off Kabuto's trial for so long. Naruto must have gotten curious, and gone down to investigate. Kabuto must have tricked him. Kushina inhaled deeply and closed her eyes. Since Naruto's disappearance, things had changed significantly, and their family had suffered greatly as a result. Minato had been compelled to drag out that very morning, and Narumi hadn't left her room in days. But those felt so real. What kind of dreams were they? Naruto-kun, that's not good enough. Try again. I want you to complete the sequence as soon as possible. And practice your posture. It's filthy and sloppy. And learn to dodge for Kami's sake. As Naruto hit the ground hard, Konan snapped, her amber eyes growing icy. He wiped away the perspiration that was streaming down the sides of his face as he sat up, and then he quickly got back up on his feet, groaning as his muscles started to ache from the soreness and pain of the previous few weeks of training. He had completely changed his way of life and even his wardrobe since Pain had designated her as his mentor. In addition to replacing his shinobi sandals with a new prototype shinobi boot that was lighter and more durable than the sandals, Konan had also taken the old jumpsuit that his father had given him and replaced it with black cargo shorts, a mesh undershirt, and a black vest with orange outlines that only reached his mid-ribcage. He had no complaints about it at all, but it did help keep the sand and dirt off his toes. That did, however, lead him to his new mentor, Konan, who, in spite of her seemingly bipolar demeanor, had turned out to be exactly what he had always desired, albeit to an unduly extreme degree. She had offered him a rigorous, no-nonsense training regimen, in the form of chakra-based gravity seals, to supplement her self-proclaimed shinobi diet, but he still couldn't understand why she insisted on training barefoot. I swear to God that she will kill me. When a shinobi with less than adequate potential offers to train you, take advantage of the opportunity and don't talk. It's hard enough to find a shinobi with any discernible talent who doesn't have any pitiful quirks. What are you doing? Get away. Konan's smooth but hard.as. Damn. Steel fist slammed straight into Naruto's jaw, bringing him back to a painful reminder of reality before he could decipher what the fox had meant. Then, he was in the air, flying straight into the hard dirt meters away. Pay attention, Naruto. Don't let your opponent distract you in the slightest, the Angel of Aim snapped. Naruto nodded after flipping onto his feet and wiping a drop of blood from his lips. Ignore the pain. All right, I want you to come running at me now, come on. Naruto nodded in compliance with her commands and sprinted in Konan's direction, slipping at her feet at the last second only to have her effortlessly topple him while lightly tapping the back of his head with her bare foot. You're moving too slowly. Accelerate your attacks and stop depending on last-minute maneuvers. Naruto immediately dropped to his hands and tried to do a spin kick, spinning around in a handspin. Konan ducked down to avoid the attack, but she threw him backwards into a tree trunk, leaving a large dent in it. She turned to face the blonde and said, "Don't attempt flashy attacks, unless they are guaranteed to produce the results worth the unnecessary energy cost." Naruto nodded his approval, then sighed and squirmed as a sharp pain shot through his back, making him realize that he might have suffered a serious injury because he was unable to move at all. To his dismay, Konan said, "You'll need to spend a few hours in the Genesis tank, Naruto." Not again. Pain's groundbreaking medical miracle, known as the Genesis tank, was a huge pod that held a unique liquid that could treat the most serious illnesses and even cause the body to adjust somewhat to it. The first example, in Naruto's case, was when he broke his left elbow during a training session and completely burned all of his chakra coils in his legs. The machine had broken down any loose bone fragments, rebuilt his elbow, and damaged nerve endings in just 8 hours in the Genesis. The liquid enzymes had broken down his coils, which were then replaced with new ones that were more suited to his training needs. His overall skeleton, however, had been molded into a lighter, but much more flexible and durable bone variation. Regretfully, as Konan had informed him, the Genesis had a price. If you used it more than 4 or maybe 5 times in your lifetime, the enzymes in the liquid would start eating away at your body's DNA structure, gradually turning you into a mere puddle, figuratively. In the second instance, however, he experienced pulmonary arrest and heart failure while training. Subsequent sessions in the Genesis had significantly strengthened his lungs and given him a much greater capacity to tolerate pain. Lovely, I've already had 3 sessions, so I might have 1 more left, but I'd rather not take the chance. He sighed, I'll probably have a spine of steel now, before Konan used her foot to push his back forward. Agghhhhhh. As Konan corrected his entire spine, Naruto fell to the ground in agony, feeling his own spit trickle down his chin. Naruto rolled his eyes and straightened up as the intense pain subsided. Be thankful that the Genesis gave you a higher pain threshold. I doubt you would have stayed conscious, had you not been adapted to this, she said blankly. Ah, that's better. Has anyone ever mentioned that you are an extremely strict taskmaster when it comes to training? I think that being out cold right now would be a huge improvement. You are my first student, never mind. Konan waved at Naruto and shook her head, letting a smile slip from her lips. Let's go eat, Naruto-kun, then you can take a shower. Congratulations. You're eating your veggies, though. Gosh. Slap. I will not have you cursing, when there could be orphans around. Yes, ma'am. Yes, strict, after 8 years. Interrogation of Tayuya. All right, wait a moment. Tayuya looked at Jiraiya for a moment, blinking, and then the older shinobi let out a sigh. What? To begin with, how did you find out about the conversation between Kushina and Minato? Secondly, you still haven't disclosed how or when you first encountered Naruto. Tayuya smiled and gave her head a sheepish scratch before shrugging. Well, it is going to be a long story. As for how I know what Kushina and Minato said. Well, I can say this. As her former apprentice, I know a lot about what went down in Kushina's life. You were her trainee? For a time, yes, but that's beside the point, anyway. Jiraiya shook his head and looked down, sighing. We may require a... Has she spoken up? A young girl, she said as she opened the interrogation room door. Actually, yes, but not a lot. She's telling us how Naruto grew up. The little girl sat down and nodded. When one caught a glimpse of Tayuya's platinum, blonde hair and pale blue irises, her face became emotionless. What brings her here? The girl flinched a little as she asked. Tayu. Chan, I'm sore. Don't call me that, Yamanaka, don't you ever dare call me that. After all the shit he did for you. You turned him in, and set him up. It was beneficial to him. I was unaware that it was a trap. Tayuya scoffed and turned away, returning her attention to Ino. But the blonde inhaled deeply as her eyes began to well up with tears. What else took place? To Tayuya's surprise, she whispered, continue the story. Fine. 4 months after Naruto's escape, 8 months prior. As he navigated the food vendors in the Omegacure supermarket, Naruto sighed. Let's see. I need salt. Sugar. Carrots and eggs. Broccoli, plus lettuce. I should get some beef and chicken, while I'm at it. Only a few months had passed since Pain had taken it upon himself to teach him philosophy and politics, and Konan had taken him under his wing. But what had become interesting was that Konan would always start swooning over his food choices and diet, and she would always be on the lookout for new friends, especially the girls. Pain, in spite of his constant efforts to prove otherwise, would become agitated whenever Naruto left the house late at night to go sightseeing in the village. Every time he did, Konan would subtly accuse him of failing to discipline the boy promptly. Your student, your responsibility, is what Pain would say after doing the sensible thing each time. Now that I think about it, they resemble family almost exactly. Oh, take care, a tiny voice exclaimed as Naruto abruptly stopped. It was a young girl, perhaps about 14 years old, whom he had unintentionally bumped into. I'm sorry. The embarrassment of his distracted behavior caused his face to flush as he laughed. The girl smiled and waved her hand gently, dismissing his apology. After she said, No, it's all right, I'm sure you were merely thinking of something important, Naruto nodded. Yes. I was thinking of my mentor, Konan-san. Oh, you're Konan's new apprentice, then? Are you familiar with her? With a perplexed look at the girl, Naruto asked. Now that I think about it, she's really adorable. Wait for it, What? Wait a moment. The blonde's mouth fell open as she laughed and said, Heh, of course. My mentor is the commander for Omegacure's guerrilla defense tactics. What? Commander? Indeed, that is correct. Oh no, I'm running late, sorry, but I have to leave. I might be late for our crucial meeting soon. Goodbye, miss. Before the girl grinned and leaned into his ear, Naruto grinned. By the way, my name is Haku, I'm a boy, it's there. Guy. I adore it. You knew, you ass? I don't claim to know that, boy, but I do say that you have almost run out of time to go grocery shopping. Oh, what a waste. Let's see, I need lettuce, carrots, eggs, salt, and sugar. I should also buy some beef and chicken. It's like deja vu. You know, Itachi, I haven't been sent on a mission in a long time. How about you? As he sat down to read his favorite book on a log, Kakashi asked. Itachi simply shrugged, turning on his Sharingan and surveying his surroundings. It's been too long. I've almost forgotten the thrill of a challenge. With a sigh, Kakashi turned a page and nodded. Nowadays, the only real challenge is paperwork for the Hokage. Yes, Kakashi, tell me about your most recent mission. Me? A Megakure was at the time embroiled in a civil war between Hanzo the Salamander and an extremist group called the Akatsuki. Minato sent me to assess the strength of both sides. What was yours? It was a recon objective, close to the Land of Rain. An assault mission. Oh, I had no idea you did those. Project Runway. You were involved in that project? Yes. It was to be an assassination on a renegade group that comprised of known terrorist Deidara of the Rock, former swordsman Kisame of the Mist, and led by Orochimaru of the Leaf. It was a failure, however. I've heard that Anko and Katetsu spent nearly 2 years in the hospital, right? And Asuma died. Yes. Itachi. Even to this day, Hiruzen has asked me to forgive myself for an action I could not have stopped. But at the time, I allowed my arrogance to gain the better of me. My mistake put my team in a situation that forced Asuma to sacrifice his life for us. He died for a cause, Itachi. That's more than what many can say. True. But still, I refuse to show my face to Hiruzen or Kurenai. Ah, Kurenai. She had a crush on him. How tragic, yet romantic. Heh. A voice above the two Leaf elites laughed, and Itachi closed his eyes quickly, a faint smile spreading across his face. Kakashi put down his book with a sigh. Page 89, third paragraph. A second voice chuckled, well, Kakashi Hitaki, it's a shame you didn't bring backup. Kakashi, out of the 4 of them, which do you want? After pausing, Kakashi counted them out. I'll take Hidan and Kisame. Then I get Kakuzu and Sasori. The last person standing has to ask Anko out? Deal. By all measures, patience was a clear virtue, but it was also clear that it was one of the weakest qualities, possibly surpassed only by humanity's incapacity to truly forgive others. Regardless of how you look at it, eventually both paths crossed, and someone would eventually lack the patience required to forgive. In Naruto's current situation, that was the case. He couldn't bring himself to forgive Konan for her complete betrayal and foul play during her most recent training session. In a series of dodging rounds, she made him use his gravity seals. Without prior notice. Would you genuinely put some effort into this and stop acting like such a child? As she directed her chakra to her arms and chest, Konan asked her to pick up a big rock the size of Naruto's head. Effort? You're hurling enormous Santo? Dodge? Naruto's eyes widened rapidly, and he stopped in the middle of his sentence, dropping nimbly to his stomach, in a push-up position, unable to do more than wince as he felt the wind above him break at the speed of the stone above him. You barely got away with it. Listen carefully. A low-class Chunan's reaction time is hardly faster than yours. As she picked up 2 more rocks, the blonde's mentor snapped. As she gazed at the 20.2-foot tall pile of sediment, she reflected, I'm glad I got up early to gather a moderate pile of stones. Can we actually take a vacation? This is where I'm going to die. Naruto gasped, and Konan just stared at him before hurling the 2 rocks she was holding at the blonde. Consider quickly. She sobbed while keeping her gaze fixed on the blonde. Using the first stone as a makeshift step, Naruto jumped into the air as if instinctively, then sprung off the second projectile, only to double over in agony as soon as he landed after a foot slammed into his stomach. Before noticing a frown on the teen's face, Konan sighed, as I said, pay attention to your opponent. He clutched his stomach as he stammered, why you never said, you would hit back. Konan felt her eye twitch, then she turned away. I didn't say I wouldn't, did I? To his surprise, she gave him a chilly response. Indeed, can we please take a break, Konan-san? Taking deep breaths, he asked. Fine, but only a half-hour break, then it's back to training. As he watched Konan sit on the edge of a small stream and remove her shinobi sandals with grace, Naruto nodded, understood. Naruto watched in silence as she slowly touched the water's surface with her toes, causing a slight bubbling sensation in the pit of his stomach. However, after a minute of just touching the water, Konan cautiously sank her feet into the water. As the blonde started to perspire, she said, you know, I can tell you're watching, Naruto. While continuing to focus on her own feet. Oh no. She'll believe I'm a pervert. I'm so sorry, I didn't intend to. Konan patted the grass next to her and let out a soft, surprisingly quiet laugh. Naruto took it as a cue to take a seat next to her and did so. After a few weeks, he thought this would be a good time to ask her a question that had been on his mind. Hey, Konan-san. Yes? I have a question, if I may ask it. All right, Naruto, tell me what it is. Even though we hardly ever fight as shinobi in those conditions, it seems like you usually have us train barefoot. Why is that? Konan became quiet and took a few moments to gently splash her feet in the water before turning to face the sky. Because it reminds me of what it was like for me, as a child growing up. Life doesn't always present you with the conditions you might see as realistic. What? What are you saying? She smiled warmly at her apprentice, who blushed slightly, and then she looked at the few stars that were starting to show. As a kid, I grew up in poverty during the Third Great Shinobi War. I remember reading about that. A megacure was located in the middle of multiple great nations. Yes, and as such, we were also subjugated to many skirmishes, battles, and wars. By the time I was born, this village had been ravaged in violence. So growing up in my childhood, I was dependent on adapting to a dangerous and fast-paced life in order to survive. Naruto bit his bottom lip and refrained from speaking when he saw Konan's serious expression. How did you break free from that way of life? Konan gave him a startled look and went back to counting the stars. In truth, I never really escaped. A megacure is still torn apart by war, and I'm still living here. But for a few years, I was living in bliss with my teammates, Nagato and Yahiko. We were being trained at that time by Jiraiya of the Leaf. You were trained by Jiraiya? Yes, for a while, before he left. Oh, how are your teammates doing? Nagato is in hiding, for good reasons. And Yahiko, you know. I'm sorry, Konan-san. Konan flinched a little as she felt Naruto's little finger wipe away a single tear, letting a melancholy smile slip through her mask of indifference. I'm going to grow strong, Konan-san, for you, and for the orphans in AIM. Naruto. So that none of them have to continue suffering, I'll be the protector of AIM. When a real laugh came out, Konan covered her mouth, nodded, and then laid down on the grass with her arms folded behind her head, giving Naruto a gentle pat on the head. When he grows up, he will be a fantastic man. I wonder what might have happened if Hanzo had not been killed by the Yondaime Hokage all those years ago. You two seem to be having a great time during your free time, don't you? A rough voice asked, making the two turn to face each other. A tall man, wearing only slacks and no shirt, stood with his arms crossed, a giant sword fastened to his back, his lower face concealed by a mask. It's good to see you here, Zabuza. I can't imagine Haku is with you. Well, you might as well. I notice that your apprentice is also present. Waving a hand between her student and the AIM commander, Konan nodded. Naruto, this is Zabuza, the head of AIM's guerrilla division. Zabuza, this is, as you figured out, Uzumaki Naruto, my apprentice. Zabuza grinned and held out his hand, saying, It's a pleasure to meet you, kid. Naruto stood up, took it cautiously, and then almost instantly Zabuza tightened his hold. Naruto then started concentrating chakra into his hand, making it stronger. Zabuza laughed at this and quickly relaxed. Hey, I like you, kid. It takes guts to try to match me, and most people wouldn't consider doing it. I understand why Konan took you in. He was cautious as well. Brats these days don't exhibit that at all. After grinning, Naruto sat back beside Konan, who just gave Zabuza a sly smile. I told you, he has a high ceiling. Let's not get cocky, Konan. You've grown more outgoing since Konoha entered high tension with Kumo. About 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to meet their Hokage, Namikaze Minato, who fought alongside Pain during a raid on a Konoha vessel. The two seasoned shinobi were taken aback when Naruto remarked, I remember him talking about that, a while back. Zabuza and Konan both turned to look at their blonde companion, the object of the unexpected statement. He was talking about the difficulty he had figuring out ways to bypass Pain's defenses. It seemed as if the Hiraishin no Jutsu allowed him the manner in which to draw near, yet Pain wouldn't allow any of his special kunai to get closer than a few dozen meters. It was actually frustrating to him. Before shaking her head, Konan experienced a tiny surge of pride. In all truth, Pain was also frustrated at his conflict with the Yellow Flash. Prior to Minato, Pain had never been in a situation where he had to truly depend on pure defense, and was unable to go on the offensive. To be honest, I refused to believe it until I watched him in person. The speed that the Hiraishin used was inhumane. Father spent many years perfecting that jutsu. With his curiosity at an all-time high, Zabuza questioned, now that I think about it, did he teach you any jutsu? Even the weakest one? Naruto turned away and said, no, he didn't teach me any of his. Feeling that his response was unfair, Konan frowned. Oh. Zabuza sighed in disappointment. It's cold that you didn't even impart any knowledge to the child. The blonde went on, but that doesn't mean I didn't learn any of them. I was certain I loved this child. Do whatever it takes to get stronger. As he landed beside his mentor, Haku said, I apologize for being late. The boy with the feminine features scratched his head and then let out a sigh. There was a young girl near the central district that was in need of directions, so I offered to show her WH. Zabuza glared at the teenage boy and said, save it, kid. As believable as your excuses are, which I admit they truly are, I happen to know that you were dining at the local ramen shop. So don't try to fool me. After giving a firm nod, Haku softened his expression and turned to face Konan and Naruto. He looked at the slowly emerging stars in the pink dot and purple skies and grinned, saying, Konan.san, Naruto.kun, it's a pleasure to meet you. I see you're enjoying the afternoon sky. AIM was generally a rainy village, but when the clouds broke, the sun would set and the scene would be breathtaking. On these occasions, he had noticed that Konan and Naruto had started to just unwind and talk about life and their separate experiences. If they were lucky, they would talk into the night for hours on end. If that happened, they would just fall asleep beneath the stars. However, their shortest conversation to date lasted just 6 hours. Watching Zabuza lean against a tree, Naruto yawned, you know, I'm really starting to appreciate this village. It's different from Konoha, but I like that. Haku had already started working on an ice sculpture on the lake's surface. Overall, the family dynamic here was stronger than that of his real relatives in Konoha. I could definitely grow up here, I see. Zabuza began by throwing a small scroll at Naruto, saying, oh, Naruto. That reminds me, I have an important document for you. Naruto grabbed it and opened it, eagerly reading what was inside. Bewildered by the instructions, he questioned, what? What is this? Zabuza just smiled behind his mask. The guerrilla commander answered, your first mission. It's a rescue operation near the outskirts of the Land of Fire. With a swift leap to her feet, Konan grabbed the veteran by the jaw and dragged him down to her eye level. Does the Hokage know about this? Do you know the kind of problems this could us into? If they spot Naruto, they'll take him away. No. What kind of question is that? But due to their ongoing tendons with Iwa, they can't afford to spend troops on these petty missions. They won't take me away, Konan.san, Naruto, I know they wi. Before the veteran shook his head, the blonde said, no, they won't, because I refuse to abandon my promise to you. I will succeed in this mission, and I will come back. So, when should I leave? You have to meet your partner, first. Who is it? The male voice behind the blonde said, me, and he turned to see who it was. Naruto staggered backwards and cried, why you? As he saw an elderly man with dreadlocks. He wore a faded yellow tracksuit and sunglasses that obscured his eyes. Naruto was confused when the elder said, yes, I'm me, and you're you. That's the basic principle of life. N.No. You're CH. Shen. The taijutsu master, EH. So even in these parts, I'm well known? Ho. Wait, you. I recognize you. I'm Minato's son, yes. So why are you my partner? Aren't you a shinobi of Kono? Was a shinobi, kid. I'm dead, as the legal jargon goes. But to answer your question, I'm your partner, because this mission was requested by me, personally. Although, I didn't expect AIM to send in a mere child. Drawing attention to himself, Naruto said, don't underestimate me, old man. Why is this mission so personal? To Chen, Konan, and Zabuza. He's being straightforward, almost businesslike. Chen turned to look at the blonde and said, because, kid, that rescue mission is to rescue my granddaughter. Your granddaughter? Azami, if I remember. She was only 8, the last I saw her in Konoha. Who kidnapped her? Some bandits, but I don't know who the leader was. I didn't catch a good look before their escape. Zabuza shot in. Did he look like a bitch? After giving the man a long look, Naruto and Chen shook their heads. Yes. Now answer this. Will you accept, or not? Naruto straightened his black, orange short vest and mesh shirt and smiled. Hey, of course, old man. What kind of aspiring shinobi would reject his first mission? As she cautiously shut the door to her brother's room behind her, Narumi muttered to herself, so this is what his room looked like. When her parents went to a cookout hosted by the Nara family, she made sure to stay at home. Looking back, I have never been here, in fact, neither have my parents. Narumi started to notice the difference between herself and her older sibling as she moved silently through the large area made possible by Naruto's neatness. Naruto's floor was clean and vacuumed, while hers was covered in magazines and scrolls. Additionally, his books were arranged into 2 categories: combat and information. He had even gone so far as to divide the combat section into tactical principalities, genjutsu, taijutsu, and ninjutsu. The fact that her brother had kept this secret from her was unthinkable to her. So much order, so much. How much time did he spend cleaning? How could he find the time? Every time I looked, I saw him training. Narumi slowly reached for a small red book that she caught a glimpse of, noting the title. My journal. H's journal. Narumi glanced to her right and hurriedly sat down on the bed after opening the small book. A picture of Naruto showing a peace hand sign while grinning was displayed. She grabbed it, removed the picture, and slid it beneath her Atei forehead. She immediately started reading the nearly 2-year-old entries that Naruto had written. March 15th, I made the decision to perhaps begin writing down my memories. I can't contain myself any longer, even though I know I shouldn't because my parents might discover it. They only discuss Narumi as if I'm not even present. This Narumi and that Narumi. Why is Naruto unable to emulate Narumi? Perhaps if I had been trained, since they won't even give me a chance to start, how am I supposed to emulate her? Without arguing at all, I want to see my father rise to the position of Hokage. I would like to watch a parent raise a child without ever giving them a hug or showing them love. Yes, I was that person. Narumi bit her lip and started to sniffle, swallowing a lump in her throat and closing her eyes tightly. Nah. Naruto, it was entirely my fault. I'm to blame. A voice said, you miss him that badly? And a young Uzumaki girl jumped up in surprise. Sasuke. She squeaked, glancing at the slack-jawed Uchiha heir sitting on the windowsill. Glancing around the room, he answered, yeah. I've been coming here since Naruto left. The blonde had left it just as she had left it. With her voice still trembling, Narumi questioned, why? Sasuke sighed as he gazed up at the sky before shaking his head. What's the point of growing strong, when there's nobody to rival you? Asked the man. Narumi simply gave him a perplexed look. What? Look, Narumi, let's be honest. Naruto was stronger than us, you know it. What does that have to do with you? He was my role model. What? He was quiet, serious, and smart. He didn't get chased by fangirls, and he was the first to train and the last to leave. Even the teachers would have to drag him away from the fields, sometimes, replied Sasuke as Narumi nodded. It was accurate. I guess. He was like my brother. I was always jealous. Naruto never tried in the academy, yet he would tie me in grades. It was like I was seeing Itachi, but younger. I always wanted to be like him. Narumi carefully took out the photograph of Naruto and gazed at his figure, appreciating his sincere smile. Naruto, I'll track you down, bring you back, and make up for it however long it takes. Sasuke. Yeah? I'm going to train, and I'll become Hokage. Just so I can find my Naruto. Sasuke grinned at his best friend and nodded. Yeah, I'll help too. Hold on, did she say, my Naruto? What's wrong? Narumi inquired, observing Sasuke's perplexed look. Huh? Sorry. Oh, Narumi, I have a question. What is it? Did you have a crush on Naruto? Sasuke raised his hands in innocence as she screamed, what kind of question is that? The boy with the raven hair began to jump away and exclaimed, just curious. Oh, hang on, I gotta go, bye. Narumi swiftly reached for one of Naruto's drawers as soon as he was out of sight. She assured herself of the subtle scent as she brought one of his clean shirts to her face. I'll track him down and bring Naruto back. Her sapphire blue eyes would have gradually widened and her irises would have become slightly paler if Sasuke had remained. I'll locate you and create the ideal family for us. Let it drip. The sound of a single drop of water falling into the tiny puddle beneath it reverberated throughout the quiet corridors of the renowned Tower of Aim. Once easily overlooked and pushed to the side in the flurry of busy shinobi running errands for Pain and Konan, the sound now reverberated with deafening softness. That was the loneliness ring. Hopelessness. Decrease. Failure was the most important thing to him. His first mission's failure, his capacity to keep his client safe, and a new friend. As she leaned against the chilly steel that made up one of the numerous walls enclosing her in Pain, Konan muttered, he's broken, emotionally. The shinobi demi-god closed his eyes in concentration and answered, he is. But, if he is to be the boy you claim he is, he will persevere through this crisis, and not only survive the damage, but thrive despite the suffering he has been presented with. He hadn't been emotionally concerned about anything in a long time. It was odd. Stop, Pain. Is this necessary? You know he understands our goal, so there's no actual need to make him sue. With his eyes fixed on the azure-haired woman, the orange-haired man began, I am not making him go through this, to have him understand us, Konan. Konan fell quickly silent as he tried to register his words. Wait. What do you mean? He needs to get through this, to erase the idea that he will always have a successful mission, never once losing a comrade or client. In this village, we can rarely afford the naive. But I would rather he grew out of this, with support, than have it crush him later on, replied Pain, who was sighing as he fled. When Konan saw her childhood friend, she blinked and smiled quietly to herself. By many people's standards, it hadn't been much, but she understood that his concern and caution for the boy's welfare was a significant step up from where he had been emotionally. Beyond those conventional definitions of a shinobi, Naruto was unique. A tiny voice said, "Is Naruto-san alright?" And Konan turned to look at a young girl with a big brown bang covering one of her eyes. She nodded when she said, "You are the girl that returned with Naruto-kun, am I right?" Surprised, she exclaimed, "Yeah, I came with him. He's my Oni-san, for the Angel of Aim." Oni-san. The mention of her grandfather caused her voice to fade into silence as she replied, "Uh-huh, he saved me. I promised Grandpa that I would keep him company, because he helped me." At the scene in front of her, Konan could only share her head. With Yahiko and Nagato, I wanted to create a world in which people didn't need to fight wars or kill needlessly. So why does it seem more and more unattainable every second? Your grandfather was Old Man Chen. Yes, that's what everybody called him. I apologize for your loss, don't apologize, it was my responsibility, anyway. Konan and the little girl, Azami, turned to see him when they heard the low, emotionless voice of a familiar blonde. But because he hadn't used it in a few days, his voice was a little hoarse and raspy. Naruto? We all fail missions, at some point or another. Maybe so, but this was my first mission, Konan. Sensei. It was my chance to prove that your training had paid off, and that I was worth something. As she gradually came to terms with it, Konan started to see his motivations. The mission was never about Naruto's personal benefit, rather, it was about the chance to establish his own value. She could have assumed that it had been a result of his parents' neglect of him based on the information he had given her up until that point. He had an innate desire to win the respect and admiration of people around him. You grew up with the same desire that many children from less fortunate homes have, even if you were raised in a wealthy household, Naruto. Taking Naruto's hand in her own smaller one, Azami began, "It's not your fault, Oni-san." The blonde and the current kunoichi were both shocked by this action. What? Azami just grinned, her face displaying a trace of melancholy. Grandpa Chen knew what he was doing. I know I'm small, but I'm happy for him. Grandpa did what he did, for people he cared about. Feeling bewildered, Naruto looked at his companion with a gentle, melancholy expression before shaking his head. So how do you do it? Do what? How do you stay happy, Azami? You just lost your GR. I just had to watch somebody it's just that I. With his family in Konoha, Naruto, who had always been the voice of calm and reason, was for the first time in his life at a loss for words. He had never been the type of person who choked under pressure or was easily unable to speak. He had never been given command of his own mission, though, and now, on his first selection, he had failed. I am sad, Aniki. More than you think, then why are you s? But Grandpa Chen always told me that in our darkest times, we shouldn't dwell on our losses, but rather learn from the events we undergo. Konan began by saying, "You are very emotionally mature for an 8-year-old child," which eased Azami and Naruto's tension. After blinking a few times, Azami gave a soft nod. When I was younger, I always wanted my grandpa to be happy again. It became natural to me, to be a person's voice of reason. It's still amazing that one so young as yourself could be this far ahead. The way I see it, the way the Yondaime once told us, it is better to die with a reason, than to live with uncertainty of your purpose. Naruto just froze, recalling what his father had said to him years before. He gave a little smile and gave a silent nod. At the girl's statement, Konan lost herself in thought and felt a tiny glimmer of hope. That's how easily she lifted Naruto's spirits. But she's right when she says that it's better to die for something worthwhile than to live a life with no purpose at all. Konan knelt down in front of her and put a hand on the girl's head before pressing her forehead against Azami's before Azami could respond. To Azami's sudden surprise and flush, the woman grinned and said, "You're a very kind girl, Azami. You'll grow up to be a fine young woman. So I want you to make me a promise. Don't lose sight of who you are, and stay true to your beliefs." Azami nodded her head nervously and fiercely, holding on to Naruto even though he was only 11 years old. Her small 8-year-old body was nothing in comparison to Naruto's shinobi frame. In reality, Azami was never the tallest girl, I promise. After giving a nod, Konan turned to face Naruto, who was now wearing a serious expression. Konan. Sensei. Azami-chan, I want to apologize. Naruto.kun. Look, it's not yo. No, Konan looked at Naruto, who now had a determined expression on her face, shocked at being interrupted mid-sentence. What? I'm not apologizing for being sad, and yes, it is fault for how the mission turned out. I'm apologizing for the fact that I'm not training. What do you mean, Aniki? Azami inquired, puzzled by Naruto's tirade. I mean. Naruto gave Konan and Azami one last glance before leaving for the door leading out of the AIM Council chamber. I'm never going to fail another mission again. I'll become stronger and defend the people here, even if it's against Konoha. After saying his last words, Naruto left the house and made his way to the only person who could grant the one request that could alter his weaknesses in the rainy streets of a megacure. Pain. Can't. Give up. Narumi exclaimed, clutching her injured left arm. She only knew that her left shoulder burned terrible when she tried to move it, but she didn't know the precise cause or method of her arm's injury. She also experienced pain in her forearm when she tried to move her hand or even tighten her fist. Narumi. Please stop, now, Minato commanded, standing with his arms folded accordingly. He had no idea why Narumi had suddenly felt the need to train so much, but he suspected it wasn't for the right reasons. He might call it a father's instinct. She moaned and wiped a tiny trail of dried blood from her lips. I'm going to. Bring back, Naruto. I'm going to make this. Family whole. Again. She said. She was unable to deny that she had instructed her father to strike her with all of her might. She had made a mistake. Inquiring as to why his daughter had developed an attachment to Naruto, Minato said, Narumi. Tell me, why do you have such a sudden interest on your brother? She had developed those feelings, but it wasn't so much the why, as it was the when and how. Despite his error in judgment, he was aware that she and Naruto were never on the same page. Why, then, was she so determined to train him? He ought to have been joyful, but something didn't feel right. Narumi just grunted before getting to her feet properly, much to the discomfort of her shoulder. He's my Aniki, so I'm going to become stronger. I'll bring him back. Minato simply shook his head before quickly approaching the young girl and giving her a tight hug. After closing his eyes, he muttered, Narumi. Bringing Naruto back isn't just about strength, as he reflected on his earlier discussion with Kakashi. Without outside assistance, Kabuto would not have been able to get past the double-layered steel bars or the chakra suppressing seals. Moreover, now that I think about it, why would Naruto have been in the vicinity of the detention cells? To start, he shouldn't have been in the interrogation department. In fact, the more I examine it, the more I believe that Naruto helped. A voice that he instantly recognized as Makoto's asked, Minato? Both Narumi and the blonde Hokage turned around, grinning and waving. To Minato's anguish, Narumi joyfully exclaimed, Makoto-san, while gripping his ear. Makoto merely smiled in her customary warm but informal manner. Before giving the young girl a firm embrace, she said, Hey, Narumi-chan, and hello, Minato-kun. To Narumi's embarrassment, the Uchiha matriarch giggled softly. Sasuke asked me to let you know that he's visiting Itachi later on, if you wish to join him. Although, I'd suggest you wash up a bit. She stammered, Hi, and fled, leaving the two adults alone. Minato was only able to observe his daughter's deteriorating form before turning to look at the Uchiha woman. So why did you come, Makoto? You know that after that I know perfectly what the deal was, Minato, but do you honestly expect Nae just forget what happened? Makoto, look, we can't As she stepped forward to meet the Hokage's gaze, the Uchiha matriarch yelled, I know what the implications are. Don't you think I'd realize what the ramifications would be, should Fugaku or Kushina find out? What I meant was, Makoto, look, and please understand, that what happened that might wasn't what you think. Makoto put her hands on his chest, the soft fabric failing to conceal the slender, well-defined, chiseled chest beneath, and asked, wasn't it? It was his physical attributes that she found most appealing. Her steel, cold blue eyes and slender, yet sturdy, muscular body managed to convey an unflinching sense of love and care. It only made his outward appearance more prominent. But it all started at his chest. The cut, square pectoral muscles that joined his toned triceps and biceps revealed a side of her that she had long believed to be hidden. Despite leaving her unable to speak, he evoked the strongest and most brilliant sense of independence in her. When she saw him flash his trademark sheepish grin, she would feel her knees start to give way. What are you doing? Minato lost his balance as Makoto's lips pressed against his mouth before he could ask the question. Makoto straddled his lap, and instantly he felt his back strike the grass fields below. He sensed that something was drawing his attention already. Makoto. Are you insane? Kushina could be coming along at any moment and I know, Minato. I love Kushi-chan. She's like the sister I never had, but this. I refused to give up what we had that night when you realized Naruto-kun wasn't captured. I gave you comfort, Minato. Makoto, I was drunk. Jiraiya Sensei and I had gone to a bar with Kakashi to help mellow out our th. Makoto yelled, that's not what you told me, in a tone that broke. The strong and always shameful matriarch of the Uchiha started to cry in front of Minato, but all he could do was stare helplessly. Makoto-chan. She stammered as she weakly struck Minato, her strength and will depleted. You said you loved me. You said I was beautiful, Minato. You promised that I'd never be alone, and that I'd always be able to company count on you. Even if Kushina was your wife. I did. Makoto gasped quietly as she felt two strong arms encircle her waist before being drawn forward and kissed Minato. The blonde pulled her up, and she caught her legs around his waist, not bothering to ask what had happened. She was determined not to waste this opportunity. As Pain went through the documents the young blonde had just handed him, he asked, Uzumaki Naruto. Do you know what you were asking me to do for you, right now? Have you the slightest idea of the implications that could follow us, should I grant you this request? Silently, he answered, I do. Pain-san. Declaring that I'm going to train is one thing, but pain still terrifies me. And you sure about this? Because in brutal honesty, Naruto. I don't even know why I'm even considering agreeing to this. You are asking me to pull aside two shinobi prospects, who match specific qualities, in addition to any given Enbu operative with extended general knowledge in just about every known field. Do you have any idea, at just how ridiculous and downright stupid, it is for me to pull somebody like that aside? A figure emerged from the shadows behind Pain and said, I wouldn't say it's that ridiculous, sir. It's been a while since I got to set foot outside these walls publicly, anyhow. I'm shocked that you returned so early from the assignment you were handed, Shisui. Naruto stammered, Shisui? Before collapsing back onto the floor. Shisui shook his head after raising an eyebrow. Even Naruto left. What is this? Trade. Shinobi week. I'm gone for a year or so, and Kumo gains the Fuma clan 2 days ago. Kirigakure began building an outpost near the Uzumaki ruins just yesterday, and now the Yondaime Hokage's son is a ninja for AIM. What's next? You want me to teach kids how to dance the waltz? I need you to take on Naruto as your personal apprentice for advanced shinobi arts. Shisui's loud mouth swore. You haven't assigned him a sensei? Somewhat, yes. Konan is more of an acting mentor and guardian. Oh, tell me Shisui, I do have a question. What is it, Pain-san? What would you say, if we were to create a branch within AIM to select future prospects, and place them in specialized units? Shisui crossed his arms in front of his chest and fixed his eyes on Naruto's, who looked down at the ground shyly. I've heard rumors that AIM had gained a raw talent a few months ago, though nobody ever mentioned it was the Yondaime Hokage's son. As for your question, it is debatable. Do you at least have a prototype team, with whom we can test this project? Pain closed his eyes and shook his head before glancing out a window at a tiny academy in the distance. Not at the moment, no. But I'm going to grant you permission to go to the academy, and test all the youngest recruits. Whomever you and Naruto deem worthy, shall be your subordinates. Naruto? You're granting him the right to selection? He's the heir to Namikaze Minato, an Uzumaki by blood, and a direct apprentice to Konan for the past few months. His debut mission was distasteful. But still to be expected, when 2C-rank criminals are involved. I see. In that case, come Naruto. I have a series of tests for you. The young blonde teenager got up and bowed, trailing Shisui as he headed for the AIM training fields. I will not remain weak, instead, I will become strong. After that, I will demonstrate to Konoha who the true golden child is, and I will avenge them for putting Narumi above me. Makoto was a mess for the first time since she had been a genin trainee. She was unsure of what to say or do. Matching the rhythm of each thrust from the man who had her hunched over against a tree in the middle of the night was the only thing her mind could do. Am I? Min. Minato, she moaned softly, sensing the heat emanating from his body whenever he touched her. It only got worse because he would grind slowly but deeply after each thrust. It only made her on the verge of going insane. Mick. Makoto. The Uchiha woman turned to face him after hearing him moan her name. In a moment, she looked into his eyes and saw that they were glazed as he looked at her. Minato. She muttered, scolding herself in her head for sounding like a schoolgirl who was only able to say her name. Makoto lifted her legs up and placed her heels at his shoulders as Minato slowly turned her around and picked her up. As she felt his hands move down to her back for support, she gave a little squeal. Plural please. Minato. Harder. The Yondaime swiftly retreated to use the same tree as support, leaning into her neck. I'm getting close, but not right now, she needs to finish first. Minato gained fresh resolve and started thrusting deeper, lifting Makoto and lowering him a little. The former. Kunoichi started gasping at every movement, and he soon got the results he sought. Ooh. Makoto shook her head vigorously, biting her lip as she felt a burning sensation build in her stomach. No, don't yet, please. We just got started, a little bit more time. Makoto began grinding her hips and tightening her grip on him, which only enhanced the pleasure she was already giving both herself and him. Makoto and Minato kissed one last time before they both geeked out over the obstructing climax before they could stop it. Mikoto. She didn't realize their error until it was too late, and she was already experiencing the same hot liquid sensation repeatedly. Minato had just finished inside her, and they were unprotected. Narumi looked around again and carefully inspected Naruto's room once more. She truly had no idea what it was about it that she loved it, but every time she visited, she couldn't help but grab his shirts and smell them. There was an enticing smell that Naruto left behind. She started carrying and keeping his signature goggles to commemorate his departure, something she would never confess to anyone outside of herself. No one else touches his belongings except me. No one else touches his belongings except me. She was aware that most people would think she was being overly sensitive to his loss, but what did they know? Did they know what it was like to lose the one person who kept you rooted in reality? I'll make sure you never feel bad again and bring you back, Naruto-kun, so we can be happy together. As Sasuke entered the room through the window, he said, Yo, Narumi? You okay? After the young Uchiha nodded, she grinned and said, Yep, time to go. Kakashi'll be waiting for us, before heading out. He thought grimly, she's hiding something, and then he gave the girl a sidelong glance. A shiver of fear went through his body almost instantly. She was smiling. Crazy, at a Naruto picture. Oh Kami. He observed the scene in front of him, looking down at the robes in his arms, which only made him more perplexed. But will these be useful to them in battle? They lacked any kind of protection from weapons, and to be honest, the dark brown robes looked dreary when paired with the black leather vest and boots. Speaking for Naruto and Jugo, Tayuya exclaimed, Hey, how the hell is this supposed to help us? A dull shuriken could tear these things up completely. However, Shisui sighed as he got to his feet, exposing similar attire, in response to her outburst. You'll find that often in a shinobi's career, you will come across situations, in which conventional armor only holds you back, such as if you were Naruto concluded, starting on an assassination mission, but was met with a tense silence. Shisui realized right away that he wouldn't have to worry about imparting any practical knowledge to the three teenagers. They had already come to terms with the possibility of having to murder another human being. It's interesting that the only person I've seen to accept that fact so easily was it. While Naruto completed putting on the leather vest, Jugo put on his own robes and remarked, I feel like some old hermit that lives in exile, in a giant desert. As he brushed his hair back to its wild, natural state, the blonde continued, Yeah, let me tell you, Jugo. I'm going to be some legendary chosen one, who's eventually going to be turned evil, by being manipulated by some evil force, who uses my own loved ones against me. You two are dumbasses. Talented dumbasses, but still a pair of idiots. Tayuya tapped her foot and crossed her arms in response. Shisui shook his head and said, You three are hopeless at times, you know that? Before examining a small scroll. Pain. What are you thinking? Do these three actually have the potential you claim? When I saw Naruto's abilities, I was confident, but they're still quite young and laid back. To the surprise of the man, Tayuya, who was leaning behind the Uchiha, asked, So we have a C-rank mission, already? I thought new squads only got D ranks? Naruto, Jugo, and Tayuya were all excitedly reading the contents. He inquired as to how the genin had accomplished the feat, saying, WH. What, hey? You aren't given proper clearance to read these documents. As a matter of fact, how did you three even sneak up on me like that? After all, he was a former Konoha Anbu agent. Tayuya said, how? As though he had developed a second head. Naruto went on, matching his redhead teammate's words, it wasn't anything? With a puzzled expression on their face, Jugo concluded, we simply walked up behind you. Either they're diamonds in the rough or I'm losing my touch. Beautiful. I hope you're correct, Pain. As the Uchiha took one last look at the mission report, the redhead asked, so, what's the first mission, Shisui, Sensei? We're meeting at a rendezvous point, near the border of Wind Country, with a contact of mine. So prepare for a possible attack by low-level shinobi. Possibly simple mercenaries, if anything. Naruto asked, wait. Attack? I thought C-rank missions didn't involve any danger of combat? And his teammates nodded in agreement. Shisui grinned slightly to himself, glad that they had at least reached a consensus. Under regular standards, yes, that would be the case. But AIM implemented its own systems, standard class and operative class. Operative rank missions pose greater dangers than their standard class counterparts. That being said, a good idea would be, C-rank operative missions are essentially B-rank standard class mission that must be taken with complete precaution. All operative missions, regardless of their rank, are politically focused operations. Tayuya summarized Shisui's response when she asked, so every mission we go on will tie into the relationship with other villages? The three of them paled slightly as he continued, that's a crude generalization, yes. But they can extend further than just villages and cages, they can extend up to the daimyo of a given country. Tayuya's confidence rapidly waned as she stammered, shish. Shouldn't we be training for this, sensei? You mean we're getting literally tosses into this without preparing? But as Naruto closed his eyes, long, forgotten memories of his previous mission came flooding back. As evidenced by his previous mission, this would not be the first time he would be on a mission that involved potential combat. However, it would only be his second, and given his general inexperience, things could quickly go south. But why Pain would send us on this mission is beyond me. Shisui has been helping us with the fundamentals of martial arts and chakra enhancement, and we have been performing simple exercises, but this all of a sudden? What's happening? Trip in itself would normally take a week, however, since the meeting will take place a month from now, we will be traveling at a slow pace. There are 4 AIM outposts along the way, so we will stay a week at each one. There I will train you in preparation for the mission. The redhead nodded and let out a sigh of relief, finding some solace in the fact that she could at least prepare for it. After grinning subtly, Jugo pumped his fist into the air. It made his female teammate roll her eyes. Woo, I'm going to prove to everybody that I can be an awesome ninja. That way nobody can say I'm a useless fatty, he yelled. In contrast, Naruto chuckled softly, appreciating his optimism. He's not such a letdown, and I like him. Shisui said, and Naruto, Konan wishes to know how your assignment is going. Which caused the blonde to groan loudly as he recalled their earlier encounter with AIM, the azure-haired angel. Rewind as Shisui assisted the gasping blonde teenager in standing up, Konan grinned and said. Not bad Naruto, not bad at all. You've been making good progress, despite the little time you're given to actually practice your technique. Even without a mirror, Naruto could see that he was a complete mess. He could sense the perspiration that stuck to his body combining with the grime and dirt from the ground into which he had been flung time and time again. Furthermore, his vest and mesh shirt were ripped to pieces, barely holding onto his body. With his knees shaking from the battering he received during their alleged friendly spar, he said, Thanks. What was the point? Oh, of me getting my butt handed to me on a platter? She muttered to herself, at a volume that neither Shisui nor Naruto could hear. I needed to take notes on how you were doing with the fighting technique you told me you were creating, so that I could pinpoint any signs of weakness or flaws in the form. Okay, so, let's see. Konan got up from the big rock she had been resting on and looked at the notepad a few times before approaching Naruto. Naruto nodded curtly, then slowly positioned himself with his feet shoulder-length apart. He then turned slightly to the side, holding his right hand in the same direction but keeping it slightly bent, and his left hand outstretched loosely. So, what did you find? Shisui asked, observing his pupil's method. He was tempted to activate the Sharingan in order to duplicate his form, even though he knew it was wrong. He was aware that it was still crude and unpolished, but he had seen firsthand how effective it was. First of all, the form, which has yet to be named, relied heavily on Naruto's strength and agility to overpower your own attacks, in a series of counters. An example was when you tried to sidekick the boy. Naruto threw himself backwards, lowering the damage received, but managed to grab your leg in the process. From there, he used a combination of his strength and agility, coupled with the momentum of your attack, to spin you directly into the wall that was behind you too. Now, naturally, given your experience, you were able to stop yourself from crashing, but the fact remains he was able to counter your movement. After giving a nod, Shisui turned to observe Naruto, who remained in his stance. So, Naruto's form focuses on countering hits? No, more than simple hits, it creates openings in your own attacks while using your own force against you, by actually taking them, rather than entirely avoiding them. What do you mean? When Naruto reversed that kick of yours, most people would have ducked the attack, or attempted to dodge it in any manner. Instead, he simply lessened the blow, using your momentum against you, similar to a mirror reflecting a beam of light back towards you. Not only does he reflect it, but it hits you with the same amount of power you used initially, if not slightly more. So, by using the aggression in the opponent's attacks, he puts himself in positions where the damage is simply reduced, but allows him to simultaneously redirect the enemy's physical strength in any direction he wants. Precisely, although it comes with its own drawbacks, also. And they are? The fact that despite him reducing the pain from incoming hits, he still receives a portion of them. And even a stone wall will eventually crumble. The main this works for him, more than anybody his age, is due to his unnatural pain tolerance. Were it a genin his age, they would have been on the ground in less than a fifth of the time he lasted. What about flaws in the foundations? Any weaknesses that an enemy ninja could exploit? Yes, and that would be his footwork. Wait, how? I was watching the entire match. The manner in which he used his feet as both anchors and a means by which to swiftly move in a constant flow were rather impressive for a form that has yet to be refined. That is both a strength to the form, but also a weakness. The footwork was a solid supplement in the defensive aspect, but when it came at him attacking you without need to counter you, his movements were much slower than when he was on the defensive. Not only that, but it also used the smooth surface of the leveled ground for balance. The few moments when you two stepped onto the less even terrain, Naruto-kun quickly began having to double his efforts on maintaining that same footwork, which in turn caused him to focus less on countering as efficiently. With his legs aching from standing in the same spot all the time, Naruto exclaimed, "Hey! So, why am I in my pose? Can I get out of my stance?" "Huh? Oh right. Sorry, Naruto-kun. About your stance, it needs to have more flexibility in order for you to optimize your reaction timing. The rigidity of how you are currently standing delays your ability to react accordingly to any strike that is launched against you." The Kunoichi and Uchiha laughed when the blonde said, "Oh. So why did you need me to spar with Shisui? Sensei. Konan. Chan, couldn't you just have fought me yourself?" "Hehe, because kid, I can help with your style, by copying it." Naruto crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow, giving his sensei a shady look. He sighed in sheer frustration and complained, "You just want to copy my style, sensei. Cheater, you get the Sharingan. If I had that, I could copy any moves and fighting forms." Shisui did the only thing he had previously been unable to even imagine for the first time in what would be years. He disagreed and shook his head. "Naruto, believe me. With the price that comes with this Kekkei Genkei, you're better off like you are. Too many people become arrogant and begin to turn to complacency. But the Sharingan is so powerful. How could it be a bad thing? You can copy the opponent's movements. It's the most practical Kekkei Genkei that I can imagine, besides pay. Our leader's ability. Trust me, Naruto. Never get these eyes, okay? They're a curse to me and my clan. Never cripple yourself by coming to rely on one single trick." "But, I promise, sensei." "Good, now go practice your stance, and remember Konan's advice. Also, have you come to name your style, yet?" "Shinaru Gyakuten, sensei. Shinaru Gyakuten. I like that, kid. Holy reversal." Final flashback. Tayuya pointed to the offending blonde teen behind her and yelled, "Wait a moment. You mean Naruto has been training even more than us? That's not fair, sensei. That's why we're heading out a month early, to have you two catch up to Naruto's progress." "Wait, sensei. Why are we so rushed in this? I know pain. Sama wants to create an elite task force of shinobi, but isn't this still a bit too much?" Jugo responded with approval. "That's right, it is. But for good reason. What's that?" The Chunin exams, which were originally meant to be hosted at Konoha a year ago, were delayed and are being conducted in 3 months in the village. So, aren't we being jumped directly to Chunin? Regardless, what's the point of us participating? The Uchiha confirmed Naruto's interruption. "We're not going to participate, though, are we?" "That's right, Naruto. We're sending in 2 teams of genin, Team 8 and Team 14 to the exams, while you 2 of you will act as personal bodyguards, while a 3rd member continues on as a spy to detect flaws in the defenses of Konan. Specifically, one clan particular. With an expression of disgust on her face, Tayuya said, "Wait, are we planning on kidnapping?" But neither Naruto nor Jugo were looking any happier. The career of a shinobi isn't always pretty, kids, and at times, you may just find that you'll be the villains in the eyes of others. The 3 shinobi.in training stood there in complete silence, absorbing the intended goals of their second mission. As he opened his daughter's room door, Minato said, "Narumi? Are you in here?" As she zipped up her Chunin vest, Narumi grinned and said, "Yeah, I'm in here, Daddy. How'd I look?" Only a few months had passed since Naruto's departure from the village, but if anything had changed, it was her work ethic. Narumi had only since begun receiving instruction from Jiraiya, the former master of her own father. He laughed and said, "You look pretty nice, Narumi-chan." Kushina smiled softly at her daughter and followed suit. She clenched her fists in pride as Narumi and Minato started to perspire. "Heh, my baby girl is already a Chunin, and she's still not even 13. I think she might just beat Kakashi-chan's record," she exclaimed. Why? Yeah, Ka-chan." Narumi and her father laughed together, and she scratched her head sheepishly as she smiled foxy. Kushina said, "Oh, and Minato, that reminds me, Fugaku needs to talk to you. It's Miko-chan. He says she's been acting strange lately, and that she, well, has been going through mood swings. Plus she does look like she gained a few pounds. I think she might be going through a phase. It's almost like she's pregnant." Which caused the blonde Hokage, who was now blushing profusely, to break out. His normally composed face was now twisted in a way that was both apprehensive and afraid. When someone does something bad, karma has a way of making it into an even more terrible punishment. I'm to blame for what I did. With her fiery red hair practically glowing with excitement, Narumi exclaimed, "Hey, Dad. So when can I go on my own first solo mission? Come on." Naruto-kun would have been doing his own assignments by now. I need to get serious if I want to find him and bring him back. Kushina's husband was stunned by their daughter's audacious statement. What? Already? Naru-chan, I know you're the most promising prospect of your class, but even Sasuke-kun admitted it'd be a better idea to hold off on single-man mission for you too, she stammered. Nah. That's Sasuke, though, he's more of a leader. I'm the soldier. I want to get in the fight and end it already. Naruto-kun isn't going to come back if I'm constantly depending on other people. I need to get stronger. Give me a B rank mission. I'll do it in half the allotted time limit. She giggled, making the 2 adults feel uneasy. She remains as unyielding as she did during Naruto-kun's presence. Well, Narumi-chan, you're still too eager for your abilities. Narumi, you can't just request a B rank solo mission as if it was a D rank. They're a proper prot. Yeah, Dad, I know. Proper protocols that need to be followed, and guideline that must be heeded with the most utter precaution. Honestly, though, what's the big deal? I held off Itachi-san for almost 5 whole minutes, doesn't that show where I stand? I bet I could take on all Konoha's Genin and Chunin 1. On .1 and I beat every single one. Narumi smiled as Minato gave her a serious. Narumi, Itachi was going easy on you during your field exam. He was not giving TTHE match everything he had. Had he done so, you would have been dead within moments after I called the start. In the hopes that her daughter would not respond negatively, Kushina said, besides, Naru-chan, what will you do if you were forced to kill an enemy? Are you even to the point that you would take another's life? Come on, Ka-san, I won't kill anybody, I'm going to bring back Naruto-kun. He wouldn't come back if his sister was a mass murderer. Besides, it's wrong to kill a human being. I'm going to return my Oni-chan and then I'll become the greatest Hokage ever. I'll bring world peace to the villages, so that other people don't have to lose their family ever again. Smiled the young girl, causing her to sigh with relatives. Child, you're still as hard-headed as always. Minato looked at his wife, who was biting her lip, and then shook his head. Alright, I will give you a solo mission. Yes. Kushina's eyes widened as she looked at her husband, who was grinning at her with a gentle and comforting smile. But it will be a C rank, Narumi cried out. What, but those missions don't have any action at all. Kushina was relieved. She giggled uneasily, for a moment, Minato, I thought you would actually give her a B rank. He smiled, blushing, come on Kushi-chan, give me some credit. I mean, I'm not a terrible Hokage, am I? Am I? A loud voice outside exclaimed, "Yo, Minato," which piqued the blonde's interest. As the Namikaze Uzumaki family made their way to the front door, they glanced to see who had called his name. To their surprise, Fugaku, dressed in a full shinobi uniform, was waving at them. "Hey, Fugaku. Why are you wearing a uniform? I thought you were on temporary leave?" Minato inquired, perplexed by the situation. "Yeah, I was. But that changed, since this morning. Itachi and I are heading out for an emergency recon mission, though it could turn bad." "Huh? So why not tell me? I can call up a squad of Anbu to help you GU. I appreciate the offer, friend, but this is strictly Uchiha clan business, so anybody aside from you, the Hokage, would be forbidden from knowing." "Uchiha business? Wait, is this about him?" Fugaku gave the blonde a sidelong glance and nodded before turning away. Shisui was reported having been seen on the outskirts of a megacure territory. Any group larger than 3 shinobi would be instantly suspicious. The fact that Itachi is also well known already puts us at risk, but Itachi is the only available ninja we have that can stand toe-to-toe with Shisui in combat. Fugaku. Shisui is no laughing matter. Please, wait until tomorrow, so that Kakashi may return from his own mission, he'll be able to I wish we could, Minato. But, as it is, we're behind. We can't spare a single day. I apologize for the last-minute notice, but we have no choice. I understand. Fugaku, take caution. As it stands, Shisui's defect left us undermanned. We can't lose another Uchiha. When Shisui defected and abandoned the village, he massacred nearly the whole Uchiha village. Your family, and a few others are that's left. Before heading for the village gates, Fugaku muttered, "I'll be fine, Minato. I know what the effects were, and still are, Minato." The blonde asked, "Huh, what is it?" But Fugaku responded with a self-assured smile. "We wouldn't be so short-handed in the future, if you had simply promised Naruto to one of the Uchihas like I suggested you do." Minato blushed and shook his head, then gave a mocking growl. He screamed, "If I did that, then all of them would be walking permanent limps, after their honeymoon." Before Kushina, who was now sporting a savage-looking frown, punched him in the head. Fugaku fled as she yelled, "Baka! You do not talk about our son like he is some marriage conduit at your POLOTICAL disposal. Naya. I feel sorry for the idiot whoever weds a redhead." ACHHOOO. While dinner was being prepared, Naruto sat down in his chair and sneezed. "Stop talking, moron." As she carefully stirred the pan, Tayuya growled, "Geez, I swear, if you even sneeze anywhere near the food, I'm pouring the boiling water down your pants. He's going to kill me, I swear, so why am I even cooking for him? He only said that my red hair looked cute on me, which is stupid, stupid, stupid. Oh well, I must admit that the blonde hair is kind of sexy because it's naturally soft but spiky. Carrot, Achu. Hey, Sasuke.kun, how are you?" As she sat beside the boy with the raven hair, Narumi asked, and he nodded. As he positioned himself between Karen, the girl who had just been adopted by the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen, and Narumi, he responded, "Yeah, must have been the heat or something, though." Once more, he was probably up all night training. Karen slapped the back of the Uchiha's head while laughing. "Ah, I wasn't, in actuality, I was. Hey, I told you, oh, could you pass the chopsticks, Naru-chan?" As Narumi gave her the little pack, Karen inquired. "Having friends is a wonderful feeling. So, could you please elaborate on how this will operate exactly?" The dark-skinned Kunoichi crossed her arms behind her head and asked Karui. "Karui, please stop talking and stop asking pointless questions. If you listen, I might not have to explain myself a 7th time." The Yandaime Hokage, snarled. The young girl shrugged, sighed, and then nodded. Cleared his throat, taking advantage of the opportunity to finally speak without his young apprentice interrupting. "Due to our tension with Suna and Konoha, we have decided to seize the opportunity to negotiate a treaty with AIM, in order to strengthen our tactical standpoint." "Okay, so I'm not a general or anything, but what's AIM good for? We don't even know who their leader is, and they don't have any kind of exceptional shinobi or even qualify as a great village. It's not the shinobi that makes them so valuable, Karui. It's their location." "Where are they?" "They are located directly between the surrounding great villages. Whoever takes control of AIM would be removing whatever border separates us as a whole." "Well, I suppose we would benefit from that, but how can you be certain a megacure will accept the treaty?" Because one of our best kunoichi will be eligible for a political marriage. Oh, poor Samui. Well, at least it's for a strong cause. I meant you, Karui. Yeah, she'll be devast. Wait, what? When reporting its monthly progress to the Omegakure Shinobi and Public Relations Council, a young Chunin sighed, you know, I always did hate these type of missions, man. I don't like that whole quiet and calm scouting vibe. It creeps me out, horribly. As he ran a hand through his spiky brown hair. They had been sent on a straightforward recon mission, with the goal of traveling to a small town, Fujinami, that was located just inside the borders of Rain Country. Normally, the town itself wouldn't have warranted any attention. They had been concerned about that very fact. Nearly 2 weeks behind schedule, they hadn't even sent representatives or reported, and AIM had already sent a 4-man team just 1 week before the deadline. Stop being such a coward, Yuki. You're always saying superstitious things that make you feel afraid. Have you never heard of the placebo theory? His partner, an older shinobi with a light stubble covering his face, responded. A scar ran just along his right cheek, but his jawline was fairly prominent. A testament to the ongoing combat that AIM shinobi, even as Chunin, had to endure. Are you this judgmental all the time, Ju-san? Really, you ought to start trusting your gut more than your intellect, Yuki said, shaking his head. Yeah, well, kid, when you see the things that I've seen in my time as a vete. Yuki stopped his own search through the forest they had been walking through when he noticed his partner's abrupt pause in his sentence. Hey, Jyu-san, what happened and why did you Santo? As he took in the horrifying scene in front of the two, he stammered and dropped to his knees. Walls that were supposed to have offered protection now fell to the ground like lifeless marionettes, and buildings that they knew had once been shops, houses, and even shinobi posts were now lying on fire and in heaps of rubble, standing no more than a half-mile ahead of their position, atop the hills surrounding the designated town. It appeared to have been destroyed by an army. What? But how? As if he were a teenage boy, Yuki's voice cracked as he asked. As the elder shinobi looked around, hoping to find even one witness, Jyu whispered, no. But we only sent a squad of soldiers here, not 3 weeks ago. He would have to get closer and examine the area firsthand because, regrettably, all he could see were the flaming ruins and crumbling buildings that were clearly visible. As he stood up, Yuki and Jyu heard a slight rustle to their left, just a dozen meters away, which caused the trained ninja to react instantly. Yuki. Get up, he growled, a frown slowly spreading across his face, while his fellow Chunin partner nodded solemnly. Each of them pulled out a kunai. Who's there? According to the law of pain. Sama, you must come out and give yourself up. Yuki yelled, his hands trembling just a little bit as his body started to stiffen. Check it out, Yuki. That's not what I believe it to be, is it? As he approached the source of the sound cautiously, Jyu asked. Yuki just took a few steps forward, making sure he stayed just a step or two ahead of Jyu. Both of them could see what appeared to be a slouched, sleeping townie. Geez. How in the world does anyone manage to sleep through this? As he approached the villager closely enough to get a clear view of the body's condition, Yuki stuttered, the smell of burning concrete is bad enough to wake me you. Jyu. Yuki-san, what is that? What are they up to? What have happened to them? As he staggered back, fighting the urge to throw up, Jyu asked. The body, slouched over a tree, was severely burned, but it was clear that it had been eaten and mutilated because the flesh had been ripped and torn off, and there were what might have been sharp teeth. How could someone have done this? Jyu simply shook his head, unable to respond to Yuki's question as he glanced around. Go. Complete it, hit it. The shinobis turned to face the shouted voices in the distance. Look over there. We have to find out what happened. Jyu-san, Yuki said, getting a nod from the recuperating Jyu as he got to his feet. The two Chunin sprang forward in one motion, racing to the destroyed town where the voices had come from. They would learn of the incident. Let's see. First step is to draw the chakra into your hands. Allow it to collect, as if filling a balloon with air. After closing his eyes and taking a deep breath, Naruto slid his feet out to shoulder. Width apart, raised both hands, clasped the bottoms of both palms outward, and slowly started to draw chakra from his body into his hands while aiming for a far-off tree. He moaned, oh, okay, nay, next. Push it. Push it outwards. All. Allow it to become a dense manifestation of chakra. He felt a heavy sensation of weight on his arms, and he could almost see the wind around his hands twisting and contracting as the chakra started to pressurize itself around his chakra. Then, in a matter of moments, he heard a dull roar, as the chakra transformed into a visible, swirling, uneven ball of energy. He could swear the bones in his forearms creaked from the pressure and force used to keep the chakra in place. Then, keep it under control. Do not hesitate to unleash the attack, until the appropriate moment, he snarled, his body and even the chakra coils in his muscles feeling the effects of the held attack. Just a few more seconds, he had to hold it. Come on, you blasted chakra. 9, 8, 10. He could see the expression on his face when he finally mastered the new jutsu he had invented, but before he knew what was happening, Naruto felt his knees give way and he collapsed to the ground, the chakra still accumulating in his arms. His body and the surrounding ground were collapsing due to the sheer force of the attack's density. 5, 6, 7. He knew he wouldn't be able to hold it for more than a few seconds if he could manage that alone, and he could feel the weight steadily increasing, only adding to the internal strain on his muscles. 3, 4, 3. He was only a moment away from success, and he couldn't let himself be humiliated by the knowledge that Narumi would be more powerful and skilled than he was. He wouldn't let his Narumi form overshadow him more than she already had. No, I can't, and I won't allow some pampered and conceited child to beat me. With a sudden sense of power igniting in his mind, he growled. Regardless of the time limit, he would maintain the attack for as long as possible. I refuse to allow her to grow stronger. I will not be labeled a failure. When I beat you, who will be the last to laugh? Let's discover. Narumi. Naruto roared as he released a final burst of chakra, sending the quantity he had previously gathered hurtling out in all directions and straight at the tree in front of him. Unbeknownst to the blonde teenager, a dark-haired man behind him, concealed behind a tree, had been watching the blonde boy's private training session. Just what are you doing, Naruto Uzumaki? In a rhetorical way, he asked himself, having spent the last few hours observing the boy as he honed his distinct style of taijutsu and even watched as he gained the ability to control chakras. He had never seen anyone, except for a few elite shinobi, devote so much energy to training alone, and he had watched from a distance as the child broke not just what should have been physical boundaries but also what many would have called their point of exhaustion. Although there weren't many Anbu in the AIM ranks, those that were had received intense training in chakra detection from Konan-san and Shisui Senpai to a moderately proficient level. Neither Konan nor Shisui were naturally adept at chakra detection, so they could only impart what they knew. But in this case, he had felt the boy drain his chakra twice, but in defiance of nature, he had managed to extract a reserve twice, apparently using only willpower. What is this child made of? He acts as though he has no idea what reality is, disobeying the laws of chakra exhaustion as though they were academy regulations for kids. As all of this was going on, Naruto collapsed onto the hard ground, gasping for air as a terrible, throbbing pain spread through his arms. Since he was unable to even raise his own arms, he was unable to get up and chose to just lay there and watch helplessly as the chakra blast he had launched crashed into the tree, but nothing happened. All that flat flash and no crack. The tree's trunk, which had been intact on the outside, exploded with a loud explosion and a screeching cracking sound, sending wooden debris and splinters flying in all directions. Specifically, in his general vicinity. Ah, no, 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 the blonde exclaimed, pulling himself to his feet in a fit of adrenaline and running as quickly as his weary legs would allow. Before the different wooden remnants turned him into a pincushion, he needed to find cover. Pain. Sama, is this what it's all about? He threw aside a fox-like Anbu mask and asked a young woman with red hair, who appeared familiar but whose true identity was obscured by a silhouette that covered the majority of her body. I see you came by yourself, isn't that right, Kitsune-san? Do you require any assistance or backup? A tall man who could only be identified as Pain asked. After giving a nod, the young lady assumed an aggressive posture. I do not need the aid of my comrades in order to take down scum, such as you. Surrender, and I will see to it that you and your subordinates are tried fairly, and with mercy, Pain. With a sour chuckle, the man who went by Pain merely shook his head and took a seat in a chair close by, facing a large window that looked out over what appeared to be a burning industrial village, with the shattered remnants of the glass opening letting in the sounds of battle and war cries. He said, I think that would be out of the question, Kitsune-san, and the young woman sighed. Then so be it, Pain. Sama, you are hereby under arrest upon the order of the United Villages Coalition, for crimes against the villages of Konohagakure no Sato, and Sanagakure no Sato. By martial law of the villages, you will be detained, and executed if deemed necessary. Oh, will I? You think we're by ourselves? As a young man walked calmly between Kitsune and Pain, Pain asked without even looking at the Anbu woman. The wind from the broken window caused his sunshine, yellow hair, which was styled into a faux hawk, to gently sway. Kitsune-san. What a coincidence, meeting you here. You? What are you doing in this place? Are you with him? She inquired, perplexed by the sudden change in circumstances. The young man was obviously someone she trusted or was close to. Me? Merely taking in the sight of you destroying my hometown doesn't really help with my mood, I must admit. Are you saying, home village? Konoha is supposed to be with you. To the blonde's amusement, the girl yelled. Konoha? He howled in laughter as he gasped. You betrayed us. Betrayed you? He growled as he started to approach her, each step bringing more menace than the last. No, I would call it bringing justice upon you. Naruto. Kushina. As his wife started to thrash in their bed, Minato screamed, grabbing on and trying to hold her. They had slept soundly, but in reality, he had been looking up at the ceiling, wondering what he should do about tomorrow's encounter with the Yondaime Raikage. He had been given no warning when Kushina's fist painfully struck his jaw, knocking him off their bed. That was the Hokage's life, but his training was abruptly and violently interrupted by his wife's nightmares. Even though he could hardly understand her, he could hear snippets of young girl, pain, fight, burning village, man, menacing, coming through her anguished groans. It was more than sufficient to justify his anxiety and concern. Kushina. Get up, wake up, please. He begged, giving her a gentle shake and even splattering cold water in her face, but to no avail. What the devil is going on? As Jiraiya and Tsunade hurried in at a furious pace, they heard voices shouting from downstairs. They saw Kushina continue to convulse in Minato's arms before Tsunade grabbed the redhead and placed her hands on her temples. Minato. Jiraiya. Get the chakra seals and my supplies from the guest room, which is next to the bedpost. Right now. The blonde Sannin could only sit and watch as she carefully put Kushina into unconscious sleep with her bark, which caused both Shinobi to nod and run out of the room. Any day, no dreams were preferable to horrifying nightmares. Minato, what was that about? As he watched Tsunade apply a final seal to Kushina's forehead, Jiraiya remarked. Kushina looked like she was being plagued by a demon, or something. The blonde Kunoichi straightened up and muttered, that should keep her brain from forming any sort of dreams, for the moment. Thank you, Tsunade. Sama. I don't know, Jiraiya. Sensei. It never came up until a few months ago, but then it wasn't as bad. She would have a few sleepless nights, yet that was all. So she just started experiencing these moments. As Tsunade's interest grew, she asked. Minato nodded and then closed his eyes. Yes, Tsunade. Sama. Jiraiya said, could be a heavy conscience. To the bewildered looks of his two fellow shinobi. Jiraiya, what do you mean? Tsunade inquired. It started right around the time Naruto was last seen, is what Minato said just now. Kushina could be having nightmares, due to the possibility that she may be casting herself a large amount of blame for failing to find him. Call it a mother's regret, I suppose. The man with white hair sighed and crossed his arms. Does that mean she won't get better until Naruto-kun comes back? With a voice full of worry, Minato asked. Jiraiya gave a nod. Or until she finds peace. One or the other, would be the only answer, said the man. Minato let out a sigh and rubbed his hands in frustration over his face. He knew this would be a pain in the ass when it came time for atonement, so much for being a good family man. As Naruto gasped for air, he whispered, well, that wasn't the result I expected. He could feel his lungs stinging with every breath, primarily because he had forced all of his muscle fibers to run during that escapade. After all, how was he just going to stand by and let a wave of incoming debris hurt him? That was one amazing jutsu, but the strain and charging time would require me to be at my strongest in order to perform it without wearing myself out. I would estimate that it consumed roughly 40% of my chakra reserve. Shisui stood by a tree next to Naruto and said, not bad, kid, not bad. What? Shisui-san. As he continued to study the charred remnants of the naive tree, he asked, settling down on the ground. The Uchiha nodded, then turned to look at the same item that his blonde pupil had so disfigured. Well, at least we have no worries over your new technique lacking raw power. Although, the after effects could be more desirable. He sighed, observing Naruto as the blonde gasped for air and struggled to move. It was clear that his practice and training sessions had taken a toll on his physical condition. He could only imagine the strain he had placed on his chakra coils. I guess I went overboard. It was a bit too much, huh? Naruto laughed softly and gasped, then laid down, groaning contentedly as the soft grass and soil eased his body. "So, Naruto, what drives you?" Shisui surprised the blonde by asking. What? What motivates you to train so hard? Are you looking for easy power? Is there someone you want to keep safe? What motivates you, like you, to push yourself to the limit? My boundaries. Shisui gave a nod. Yes, tell me how you muster the will to train so hard. I know Jonin, who is less focused than you, but you hardly ever take a break, much less postpone your sessions. Alright, Naruto-kun. My family never thought I would be a shinobi, Naruto said, staring blankly at Shisui. The Uchiha felt a little uncomfortable about it. You mean the person they never thought you would be? My family never truly bothered with training me. Indeed, according to reports, Uzumaki Narumi was the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, your sister? Yes. Shisui scratched his chin and sighed slightly before shaking his head, speculating about the possible outcomes of having a sibling with a Biju. Given that Jinchuriki needed intensive training to control the evil chakra, they would have to require special guardianship, which would have meant that Minato and Kushina, the legal guardians, had been giving Narumi's training more and more attention rather than giving both children equal attention and affection. Ironic. Does she inspire you to be better than your sister, to illustrate how they erred in focusing all of their attention on her? No, Shisui raised an eyebrow, taken aback by the blonde's straightforward response, which, to be honest, he had not anticipated in such a short period of time. Why you don't? Naruto shook his head, leaned back against the trunk, and closed his eyes. The young Uzumaki sighed and grinned softly, as though recalling a treasured memory from a long time ago. I can't really explain it, Shisui-san. But I could care less about their opinions of me. I only care for the present, and not the past. I'm going to grow stronger, and I'm going to be the greatest shinobi to have ever lived. The Uchiha nodded, allowing a tiny smile to gradually appear on his face as he processed the blonde's words. He is far more intelligent and wise than the majority of people his age. Many would be consumed by their rage and the desire for vengeance. Uzumaki Naruto, what are you destined for? So, Narumi-chan, how was your training? As the ramen waitress brought the red-haired girl her fifth bowl of noodles, Ayame grinned. Indeed, Ayame-chan, it was fantastic. We learned how to correctly start detecting chakra levels from Kakashi Sensei. He stated that it would take months before we could improvise to the point where we could sense more than a few dozen meters, but, she answered, sounding a little dejected in the final moments. Really? Well, Narumi-chan, see the silver lining? You have a problem to solve? Instead of viewing it as a point that you haven't reached, you should view it as a challenge to inspire you. What? A hurdle? I suppose I see it. Yes, indeed. Ayame-chan, thank you. You have the ability to lift my spirits? Narumi smiled and sheepishly scratched her head. If my goal is to bring Naruto-kun back, I must become the strongest Hokage ever. As she turned to face the source, a voice sighed more innocently, somehow, I figured you would be here, Narumi. The former Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, was there. OG.san, she yelled, hurrying to give him a firm embrace. Oomph. Well, do you not feel happy? He rubbed his sides in mild discomfort as he gasped. The girl's strength was obviously somewhat similar to that of a young Tsunade, and he would take care to teach her patience for the protection of all young men. Yes. OG.san, today, I discovered how to sense chakra. So did Sasuke.kun and Sakura-chan. To the slight surprise of Hiruzen, she smiled. You did? He laughed and ordered a bowl for himself. Well, congratulations, Narumi-chan. Most shinobi don't learn that until later in their careers. It seems your team is incredibly talented. With a proud nod, Narumi turned to face her own bowl. As Hiruzen took in the scene, he could only stare in mild awe. My dream is to be even stronger than San. To be an even greater Hokage than the Yondaime, she whispered. So you want to surpass your father as a legendary shinobi? A tiny glimmer of pride ignited in his chest as he asked. The renowned shinobi gave her a pat on the back as she grinned warmly and said, yes. I'm going to become the greatest kunoichi and shinobi that ever existed. You'll be a great Hokage, Narumi-chan, you will. But still, you should remember that being a Hokage is not simply about knowing how to fight and how to defeat ninja, he continued, attracting the girl's interest. OG.san, I understand. I have been spending time with Shikamaru.kun and his family because of this. They've been teaching me how to play shogi and how to use it to prepare for battles and strategies. In addition, I'm learning how council meetings operate from 2 Sans lessons. In fact, I am capable of creating up to 6 Kage Bunshin. So that I can continue to train and avoid becoming overwhelmed with information, I'm having them study for a short while at a time. The old ninja looked at her with pride as she smiled. Despite her youth, she is already taking her time and even studying the intellectual and mental aspects of being a shinobi. Namikaze Narumi, what are your destiny? XX. So, Konan, what do you think this means? Zabuza asked in a voice so low that even the woman with the blue hair could barely hear him a few feet away. Pain and Zabuza had been sent on a mission to look into the disappearances of several town residents over the past few days, since Shisui had taken his team away for their extended mission and training session. The first had been a small village southwest of Omegakure, where residents had not reported for duty nearly 2 weeks ago, and they had not received a response from the reconnaissance squad they had sent out a week earlier. As a result, Pain tightened his control over Rain Country's oversight because they could not afford to let mistakes like this keep happening if AIM were to bid as a great village in the future. Zabuza, keep quiet. Have you discovered anything at all? No, not a single shred of evidence. Konan looked around again, cursing under her breath at their luck, or lack thereof. But all she saw was blackened rubble and the remnants of the town that had survived the fire. How did all of this happen, though? I don't understand. As the swordsman looked at the buildings, Zabuza said, we had 4 Jonin and a few Chunin stationed here on reserve duty. They couldn't have just up and left, or even been attacked, without us knowing of it. They should technically still be here, or at least within the country, because the border to Rain Country is tightly sealed off, so there's no chance that the entire town just left it. Buza. Look. Konan, who was kneeling next to the remnants of a side wall a few meters behind him, yelled. A small, burnt scroll was in her hand. A parchment sheet. Does it provide any insight into what transpired? The woman handed him the scroll and sighed. No. Just some strange code. Oh. Well. We need help.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.